think I met your brother. Cousin. Yeah, I was picking up. Yeah, I was picking up Charlotte's feet and also late. So that's stacked up on like this big Charlotte and 4 bags. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Oh, no. Friday. Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the April 20th, 2026 meeting of the Healdsburg City Council. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Higley,
Here.
Councilmember Kelly. Here. Vice Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Mayor Herod.
Here. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. There is no closed session to report on, so we'll move on to presentations, starting with a proclamation recognizing April 2026 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month with Councilmember Kelly.
I'd like to read a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg recognizing April 2026 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Healdsburg. Whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month is intended to draw attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and has a profound and lasting impact on every community member of Sonoma County. Whereas Verity Sexual Assault Prevention Intervention and Healing Center works with over 1,200 survivors in Sonoma County every year with a 24/7, 365 crisis and support line and tailored advocacy services at any point in their healing and justice journeys. Verity hosts over 200 presentations and events, reaching over 14,000 community members with age-appropriate outreach and education to prevent sexual violence, encourage people to show up for one another, and recognize signs of unhealthy relationships. And Verity provides hundreds of sessions of individual group therapy to support people in processing and healing from trauma. Whereas nearly half of women will experience some form of sexual violence, and at least 1 in 6 men have experienced sexual abuse or assault. Youth under 18, people with disabilities, people of color, queer, transgender, and non-binary people, homeless people, undocumented people, youth in foster care, and people in other marginalized identities are at much greater risk. And whereas over 18,000 members of our military and over 80,000 people who are incarcerated experience sexual violence every year. Whereas the City of Healdsburg strongly supports the efforts of Verity and encourages every resident to actively engage in efforts to end sexual violence, including conversations about what sexual violence is, how to prevent it, and how to help survivors of all backgrounds connect with crucial services. So now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg hereby recognizes the month of April 2026 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Healdsburg. Do we have a representative from Verity here to receive the proclamation? Hi, welcome.
Welcome, Rebecca. Come forward. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, it's okay if I say a few words?
Yeah, please do.
All right. So thank you to the City Council of Healdsburg for this proclamation and for recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month. My name is Rebecca Fine. I'm the Executive Director of Verity. Chief before. This acknowledgement matters. It matters because sexual violence is often invisible, carried quietly, sometimes for years or even decades. And when a city and elected officials take a moment like this to name it, to recognize it, it sends a powerful message to survivors. We see you. You are not alone. At Verity, we have the privilege and the responsibility of walking alongside survivors every day. Every year, we support over 1,000 survivors, notably approximately 20% of whom are children, through crisis intervention, advocacy, and healing services. They come to us to support their healing and justice journeys, all while trying to hold the rest of their lives together: work, school, family, community. In addition, we work hard every day to prevent sexual assault from happening in the first place. Our team is in schools and in the community sharing age-appropriate messages to kids as young as 5, with the goal of supporting people in understanding what healthy relationships look like, what consent means, how to look out for one another, keep each other safe, and more. And while our work is deeply rooted in care and connection, it is also shaped by a constant reality that funding for these services is fragile. The need has not decreased, but resources often do. Sustaining this work requires ongoing investment, both for responding to harm and also for preventing it in the first place. This year, in the lead up to Sexual Assault Awareness Month, a new revelation related to a cause near and dear to our community came to light. Cesar Chavez, revered civil rights leader, had groomed, abused, and raped women and girls who he worked closely with. Dolores Huerta and others carried these experiences in silence for decades, for fear of undermining their movement that meant survival, dignity, and justice for so many, and not being believed when speaking out against this powerful man. That fear, the tension between speaking truth and protecting something larger than oneself, is something that many survivors of sexual assault understand deeply. The experience of holding harm while also feeling a responsibility to family, community, or a broader cause is a reality that far too many people navigate. Just last week, 2 United States congressional representatives stepped down from their roles after allegations of sexual assault came to light. Is it shocking in our line of work to hear that men who hold positions of power had caused this kind of harm? Unfortunately, not really. But the questions that inevitably arise around the validity of the stories of the brave survivors and the dependence on survivors to speak out against this when it's well known in circles. In the case of Eric Swalwell, a whisper network, where this was a well-known behavior. It took the survivors speaking out and them being questioned and their motivations for speaking out. That part's a shock every time. How are these stories still met with doubt so often, despite all the data and history? It underscores that sexual violence intersects with power, white supremacy, oppression, and history. And it reinforces why our response must be thoughtful, inclusive, rooted in justice, and clear in one message: we believe survivors. Survivors are not alone and do not have to carry this burden on their own. We will not tolerate power-based harm and violence. So today we accept this proclamation with gratitude and with a call to action to continue building a community where survivors are supported without hesitation and with the resources that they deserve to heal. So thank you for standing with Verity and with survivors of Sonoma County this month and always. I will leave some brochures on the table in front, just in case anybody here would like to learn some more. And if it's okay, I'll hand one to everybody. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you very much for being here and appreciate you sharing that information. We'd like you to join us for a photo so we can give you the proclamation then and we can take your literature then at that.
Sure, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. That's just a test. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to presentation from the Warm Springs 4-H Government Club to report on the youth survey that they've been working on. They came and presented to us at public comment a few weeks ago, and so we're excited to have them back and hear what they have to say about the work they've been doing. Welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us. I am Tatum Kiff. I'm a senior this year at Healdsburg High School, and this is my 4th year in the Government and Civics Project.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm a junior at Cardinal Newman High School, and this is also my 4th year in the Government Civics Project.
My name is Jack Reichel. I'm in 8th grade at the Healdsburg Junior High, and this is my 3rd year in 4-H in this project.
Hi, my name is Georgia Miller. I'm a junior at Annalee High School, and this is my 4th year in the Civics Project. You can go to the next slide. This is an introduction to our project. The purpose of the survey was to help amplify the experiences, needs, and perspectives of the youth in Healdsburg. We incentivize participation by offering 3 Starbucks gift cards worth $25 each. The survey was sent out to grades 6 through 12 at Healdsburg Junior High, THS, St. John's, and Healdsburg High School. 271 responses were received from an estimated 916 recipients. We had an almost 30% return rate. Our goal was to give the city insight into interests of the youth in Healdsburg while also giving youth the ability to voice their opinions. It's important to note that we did not verify the residency, but we assume that all students surveyed use city services.
You can go to the next slide. We asked local youth to rank the cleanliness of our areas, such as parks, the plaza, and the streets. Cleanliness was a portion of our survey, as we noticed that some of these target areas have a reputation for being dirty or having trash. Our goal for this section was to discover which areas the city youth found to be not clean, so we can target these areas for improvement in the future. We asked the youth to vote each area on a scale from 1 to 10 on its cleanliness, 1 being the least clean and 5 being the most clean. You go to the next slide. We found that around half of the respondents ranked that the Georgie Park, the plaza, and the sidewalks and streets out of 4 out of 5 on the cleanliness, showing that while there is room for improvement, many respondents believe that they are fairly clean. And an equal number of respondents ranked Badger Park in 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5 on cleanliness. However, 40% of the respondents ranked the bike paths and the skate park a 3 out of 5 on the cleanliness scale, showing that those areas have the most room for improvement in cleanliness.
Next slide, please. So to just kind of break down this information for you guys, we had a variety of set responses that respondents could choose from, as well as offering an opportunity for them to input their own response. The 4 main categories that we had were beach volleyball courts, BMX pump tracks, increased mountain biking trails, and more improved sport courts. So to just kind of briefly go over those, 142 respondents requested beach volleyball courts and would like to see those in our community. Not only is that an added rec area, but it does give our high school and potentially junior high public schools the opportunity to have a beach volleyball team, which is a very fast growing sport in the high school and junior high areas and schools. Additionally, 54 respondents requested a BMX pump track as a way to also increase outdoor activity, as well as with mountain biking trails. And then finally, the more improved sport courts, whether that's a repaving or cleaning those up, adding basketball hoops or nets that people are able to use. A total of 138 respondents requested that improvements could be made to those. Next slide, please. And then this can get a little jumbled, but I took the highest personal or added responses and broke those down. So not necessarily on the city, but if you guys are looking at businesses who are wanting to come into Healdsburg, this is what some of the youth want. And those include a bowling alley, improved basketball courts, a teen rec center, a rock climbing facility, as well as an improvement to our public pool and potentially fencing, archery, and dance studio spaces. And then as well in this category, we've got other improvements that they might like to see within our city, and that kind of goes into the sport court category, but improved basketball courts. Some people requested to have more turf soccer facilities, as those are having a rising impact on high school sports, just to have them practicing on those turf facilities. An indoor tennis court, and then as well as skate park improvement.
Okay, so our next category that we asked about was a True West film interest. We had this kind of interesting idea that we could partner with the True West Cinema, which is just down there. It's new and improved. And we were asking about if the youth would be interested in a teen movie day, because we know that True West has like classic movie days for adults, but we thought that if we could get the youth involved into this local business, it would be really great for both the youth to have something to do in Healdsburg and True West to engage the youth. So we asked them kind of the rate at which they would attend this. And we asked, and we received 43% said that they would attend weekly or definitely attend, which we thought was a stunning majority. And this would increase youth involvement in the local businesses, but we also want to mention that prices have to stay affordable so that youth would be able to have this access to this resource. Next slide, please. The next category that we talked about was public transit, as we know that this is really important to teens and especially like younger teens that don't have cars yet or their license yet. So we asked on 3 categories: the smart train, Waymo, and rentable bikes, which is 3 things that the city have discussed. And we do know that the smart train is being input. And we asked which one would they most likely use. And we noticed that 60% said that they would use the smart train the most, which we thought was a really good majority and is really positive for the city to see. We also predicted this, and we asked a follow-up question. Next slide, please. We asked the youth how often they would use the smart train, and 43% of respondents said that they would use the smart train often during the week and on weekends. So probably maybe from one time a month to multiple times a month to go down to Santa Rosa or to San Francisco and enjoy the amenities there. Youth will provide a huge engagement with this system, especially because of the free fare policy that youth receive through the system. And it's important to note that because we will be having youth on these platforms, we need to maintain the safety of these platforms. Next slide, please. So here we come to the goal of our presentation. What can the Healdsburg City Council do? So the Healdsburg City Council can take measures to improve the cleanliness of the skate park and the bike paths, as we notice that the youth notice kind of a more need for improvement there. We can consider encouraging True West to adopt a teen-related movie day to encourage teens to be more involved in our local businesses. We can also consider that Healdsburg smart train stations should serve the needs of youth travelers. So, for example, we should improve the safety by lighting platforms, adding bike locks for when youth go there, and also maybe like having a vending machine so that youth can buy snacks before they get on the train. Finally, we could consider including youth interest into city planning so amenities can serve both adult and youth needs, because we all know that Healdsburg is a great city for adults already. It's awesome. It has so many cool things to do for adults, but sometimes we need to add things for the youth to do too.
Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to our findings. We hope that this provided valuable insight into the perspectives and voices of the youth. By considering this feedback, the city has an opportunity to better support and improve the lives of young people, and we are grateful for the chance to contribute to that conversation. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much. Did you have anything else?
We were going to ask you guys if you had any questions or any comments about this, but if not, totally okay.
Well, we might. I definitely have a few comments. I think this report really exceeded my expectations. You were very specific in your questions, very relevant questions to young people, and I think you did a really great job. And I think this input is meaningful to us. We hear bits and pieces on some of these different issues, and to hear have some real clarity from a larger group, albeit a certain section of the community, is I think very impactful. So congratulations for that. Anybody else like to speak? David?
I thought this was a really well done presentation. I thought your slides were really clear, and each one of you is an incredible public speaker. So you should feel really proud of the work you put into this, but also clearly you have great things on the horizon as you go off to either starting high school next year or graduating and moving on to your next journey. So very wonderful. We're so proud to have you all involved in 4-H in our community. I just wanted to share with respect to the smart train. So I know 2 of the 3 things that you had requested in there, well-lit platform and lighting in the area, as well as bike locks. So those are definitely going to be incorporated into the Healdsburg station plan. Vending machines has not been something that SMART has talked about yet, but I will definitely, as I sit on the SMART board, will take that feedback back to my colleagues and see if a vending machine is in our future. And then really great feedback for us on the different sport courts and beach volleyball and mountain biking and the pump track. Those are all things we hope to be able to include in future park development. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's good to know it's something that the youth want and that it'll get used.
Is anybody else yet?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the detail and great job. And to Dana for, kind of encouraging the kids to do this, I think is really important. And what I'd like to highlight is I really appreciated how you were aware of some things are business related, some things the city can do. And a lot of times we get requests and why doesn't the city do this? Or we needed this. And it's not everything that the city does. And so I really appreciated that. That shows me that you really did your homework on the presentation. But more than that, the responses that you got are very good response rate. I think you'll see if you stick around for our budget discussion, you'll see there's some surveys done, and sometimes we get feedback and from certain segments of the community or seniors or whatever, but the youth voice is not something that we always get feedback aside from our kids telling us stuff, but it's really valuable. So I would encourage you, if there's other things that we may need, wouldn't mind having the option to reach back out to the 4-H club to see if they can help. And then, yeah, I'm a big supporter of the sand volleyball courts. We discussed it at our council goals about installing them, but if the fellow council members are okay with it, I would love to kind of switch that to at least identifying a location where they could go within the city, because I don't think that really costs much money. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Not done yet, Vice Mayor Edwards.
You did a really good job in this survey and incorporating the crosstab information to make it really clear in your presentation, and also politically astute in presenting this before our budget presentation. So very good job there in your political careers going forward.
Yeah, so I hope you can come back. If you do, maybe you could tap our shoulder about what we need to find out about, because I have a lot of confidence in you and the work you've done. So we'd benefit from this sort of input in the future. Thank you.
So thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our annual update from Healdsburg Library Commissioner Andy Elkin. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. Well, good evening. My name is Andy Elkin, and for the last 8 years, I have served as the commissioner you appointed to the Sonoma County Library. Next slide, please. I'd like to begin with some thanks. First, I'd like to thank Mayor Chris Herod and the City Council and City Manager Jeff Kay and the city management team for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. I know you have a very full agenda, so I'll be brief. I'd also like to thank and introduce library staff who have come this evening to show their support. We have our branch manager, John Haupt, and our branch children's librarian, Charity Anderson. Thank you, John and Charity. Mostly, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your commissioner. It has really been an honor. Next slide, please. There are many things that I could say about the library, but since this is the last official report that I'll be sharing with you, I want to focus on the big picture of what's happened during the past 8 years. When I became a commissioner in 2018, I identified 4 principal challenges that I felt it was critical to address: leadership, revenue, fiscal responsibility, and the Healdsburg branch. I'd like to talk about these challenges and the progress that the library has made in addressing them. Next slide, please. So the first challenge was leadership. When I joined the commission in 2018, the library was led by our 3rd successive interim director since the middle of 2017. In 2019, we hired Ann Hammond as a full-time director, and Ann brought much needed stability and professionalism to the leadership team. One of Ann's best decisions was to hire Erica Thibault as deputy director. And when Ann retired in 2022, Erica was promoted to interim director. Then, after a nationwide search, the commission confirmed that Erica was the best person to lead the library, and in 2023, she was officially appointed to the position of director. Next slide. I'm very glad to say that Erica has proven to be an exemplary leader. She has built strong relationships with public officials and organizations throughout Sonoma County. She's been a leading advocate for public libraries with our elected representatives in Sacramento and Washington. And she has built and continues to develop a strong and professional management team. And I hope that you will all have the opportunity to continue to work with Erica for many years to come. Next slide, please. Second major challenge we faced was revenue. Now, before 2016, the library's only revenue came from property tax, and this was totally inadequate to fund a modern countywide library system. In November of 2016, Sonoma County voters approved Measure Y, a 1/8 cent sales tax to support the library. This additional revenue source was a tremendous boost and enabled us to open on Sunday and Monday, to add evening hours 2 days a week, to expand our collections, programs, and services, and to start to invest in maintaining and upgrading facilities. But Measure Y had a 10-year expiration date and was due to expire in 2027. Next slide. In November 2024, Sonoma County voters approved Measure W. Now, Measure W renewed the sales tax and keeps it in effect until repealed by voters. Now, I can assure you that no one on the commission, and certainly no one on the library staff, takes this support for granted. We all know that we must continue to utilize public resources wisely, and we must continue to adjust to meet the changing needs of the residents of Sonoma, but now for the first time since I joined the commission, we can actually undertake meaningful long-term financial planning. Next slide. A third challenge was fiscal responsibility. When I joined the commission, the library had substantial unfunded long-term liabilities in our pension fund and in our OPEB fund, which pays for health care for our retirees. Because we had just started to track our sales tax revenue and related expenses separately, our financial reports were complex and very difficult to understand. Then our long-term CFO departed soon after I arrived. We went through a period of failed short-term hires and interim CFOs. And at one point, we were more than a year late in conducting our audit. I believe that fiscal oversight is the single most important function of the commission. I've served on the finance committee for the past 8 years, and I chaired the committee for 4, and I had some sleepless nights during that time. Next slide. But we have made a lot of progress. In 2018, the commission adopted a 10-year plan to fund our OPEB liability, and we continue to make substantial progress toward that goal. In 2021, we hired Myrna Lopez as our CFO, and Myrna has done an outstanding job of bringing clarity to our reporting and discipline to all our financial practices. We've developed a close and effective working relationship with the County of Sonoma Accounting Services, and they've played an important role in improving the timeliness and accuracy of our reports. For the past several years, our audits have been timely and completely clean. And earlier this year, the commission finally approved a plan to fully fund our CalPERS pension fund. Next slide. The fourth slide was the Healdsburg branch. Now, I always believed that a commissioner is responsible for the whole library system, not just the city or town that appointed them. But I think you'll agree that it's also natural to take a particular interest in your own local community. When I joined the commission, it was clear that our Healdsburg branch was a much-loved and much-utilized resource, and John and Charity had done a great job of building a strong and customer-focused team. But it was also clear that the branch itself was 40 years old and was showing its age in terms of both its design and functionality and also general wear and tear. Next slide. Well, last year, the library completed a significant modernization project of the Healdsburg branch. The Friends of the Healdsburg Library donated more than $100,000, which paid for the beautiful windows in the children's area. The city of Healdsburg provided almost $250,000 to finance external ADA upgrades. So I would like to thank the city council for your financial support, and I'd like to thank Jeff Kay and his team for being outstanding partners throughout the planning and construction process. But I especially want to acknowledge and thank the Sonoma County Library for investing more than $2.7 million and managing the entire project. It turned out beautifully, as I hope you all know from firsthand experience. I've included some additional photos in the appendix. Next slide, please. So over the last 8 years, the Sonoma County Library has made substantial progress in addressing all 4 of these critical areas. I'm not claiming credit for what happened, but I can say that I feel grateful and privileged to have been part of the Library Commission during this period. So what's next? Well, since last fall, the library has been going through an extensive strategic planning process. The commission has not yet seen a draft of the plan, but we do know the areas of focus. I'm very pleased to say that this plan will include measurable objectives, and I understand that the priorities of the strategic plan will be reflected in next year's budget, which the commission will see on Wednesday at the budget workshop. The bottom line is that the library is in a much different place than it was in 2018. We have established a foundation of excellence, and we can now continue to build on that foundation as we seek to provide even better service to people throughout Sonoma. Next slide. So I'm going to end with a request. and that is to please appoint a new commissioner to take over this role. My term ends on July 31st, and I know that the City Council does not meet in July, so please get started on the recruitment process right away. I'll do everything I can to assure a smooth handoff and transition to my successor. Next slide, please. Now, I know you're really pressed for time. I do appreciate you giving me this opportunity to report to you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions, Council? No?
Done a great job.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for this update and all the updates and our personal meetings. You've really done a great job of keeping us in touch with what's going on in the library, and you've been a very dedicated commissioner. So thank you so much for all the work you've done, and we will definitely do our best to fill your shoes. That's going to be difficult, but we're looking forward to some fresh blood, as they say, and we'll do our best to get a good slate of candidates.
Well, I know we've got a couple of really high quality candidates who have expressed interest, and I'm meeting with somebody on Thursday who's also a potential candidate, and I'll be sure to pass them on if they're still interested.
Yeah. Thanks for your efforts there. Did you have something? No. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on now to city manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start by offering my thanks to Commissioner Elkind. We've been really lucky to have somebody who's so dedicated to serving our library and indeed the whole system, and it's just a really good partner. And rest assured that we are and have shared with the council a timeline for filling that position. So it's not a transition that we wanted because we're really, again, really well served, but we will make sure it happens smoothly. So thank you. I had just a few calendar updates and then one other quick update for you tonight. First off, tomorrow evening, 5:30 at the community center is a meeting about the Dry Creek 101 interchange improvements. You'll actually see later this evening as part of our budget presentation, you'll see a little line item for a very expensive project. This is really the next big transportation project coming in the next few years. But as we begin the planning and have actually secured some of the initial funding to start moving that project forward, some of the engagement that comes with that is starting. So there will be an opportunity for people who want to learn about the future of Dry Creek and 101. We know that has the potential to be one of the congestion points in town. And as you all know, there are some plans to make improvements there. So if people are interested, again, 5:30 tomorrow evening at the community center. And then the next day, the following morning, on Wednesday morning, hosted at the Lodge up on Grove Street, right in that same area, is a focus on the local economy. This is an event that's actually stemming from one of the city council's goals this year. We'll have a presentation by Dr. Robert Eiler from Sonoma State, who's really the foremost expert on the local economy here. I know we've all probably seen him speak about the local economy and the county economy at various events, but this is something new in that it'll really be a deep dive on the Healdsburg economy. So I got to see a draft of the presentation this morning. If you're like me and you love economic data and stats, this is going to be a really great opportunity, just rich information. And we're making a point of leaving a lot of time for discourse and questions with Dr. Eiler. So I hope people who are interested in that kind of thing, we are asking for RSVPs just to so we can keep track and make sure we don't exceed capacity, but the event is definitely free. And this is 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning at the Lodge. And we have a lot of information out on our website and social media about that. And one more event to note is middle of next week on the 30th, all day at Badger Park will be Magical Bridge Day. The council knows that we've partnered with Magical Bridge to work toward an inclusive playground at Badger Park. They're actively involved in fundraising, and part of that and just getting the information out there will be an all-day open house at the park itself where people can come and learn and visualize a little bit more about what's planned. Hopefully the weather has turned by then. I think it will, but we'll continue to push out information on that one too. It's just a good opportunity to come and engage with the Magical Bridge team. And lastly, I want to provide just one other update. We've had a number of conversations here in the chambers about different pieces of state legislation that impact what we do, housing in particular. One that's a little more behind the scenes, so I just wanted to mention it quickly, is AB 339. This went into effect this year, and it's getting a lot of chatter, probably not in the general public, but in local government circles, requiring local governments to hold for 45 days and consult with labor groups when you issue a request for proposals with the intent of contracting for certain services that might overlap with the job descriptions of your employees. So it's taken us some time to unravel what that means, but you see it quite a bit. You'll see contracts this evening, for instance, where we're augmenting plan check and plan review services because we have a volume of activity that exceeds what our staff can do. Could apply to maintenance services. It could apply to landscaping services. But it is a law that requires us to notify our bargaining groups, our unions, and create the opportunity to have a discourse with them before we go forth and issue requests for proposals and ultimately contracts. I guess my simplest message on that would be to know that we're taking it seriously and our team has already begun implementing it, and we're working on various steps that we can take to make sure we have a clear process internally to follow these regulations. Also, as is often the case, as new regulations come on board, in certain cases, it'll make us a little bit slower. And I know that's a frustration that we all have sometimes in terms of being able to get things done quickly. There are some exceptions for emergency situations, of course, but in terms of day-to-day business, it will add a month and a half or so to the ability to issue contracts in some instances. So we will work through that. I don't expect that to have a really large impact on what we do. I'm not sure it'll be something hopefully the public notices, but does change the way we have to do business in some ways. So I just want to share that with the council. And again, my key message would be that we are on it and we're adhering to it, and we're working on policies to make sure we do that consistently. I think that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment on items on the consent calendar and non-agenda items. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public on any item of interest to the public within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council, other than scheduled agenda items. Pursuant to the Brown Act, however, the City Council cannot consider any issues or take action on any requests during this comment period. Do you have anybody who'd like to speak for public comment now? Is there anybody? Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Eds Consul. I live here in Healdsburg and I work in Healdsburg, and my child goes to school here. I work at Front Porch Farm. I'm a floral designer, and I work with some amazing farmers and have a lot of good friends and community in the agricultural community here in Sonoma County. I'm here because I'm so proud of so much that that Healdsburg represents. Just everybody in this room, all the presenters today already have shown their dedication to this place, making it a beautiful and thriving place for us all to live. And I benefit from that. And I thank all of you for the hard work that you do on a daily basis to make it a safe and thriving community. What I'm grieved by on a daily basis is the presence of the arms manufacturer, General Dynamics, in Healdsburg, as we are all seeing the atrocities that are being committed against people in Lebanon, in Iran, in Palestine, in addition to the impact on our own communities here in Sonoma County and nationwide by ICE. And General Dynamics is a business that has contracts with ICE and with IDF and with our military. And I feel a responsibility to bring this forward to the council and request a conversation about what responsibility we have regarding the businesses that do business here in our city limits. I know that we've had measures where people have been able to vote on the presence of big box stores like Target or Walmart going in anywhere near our plaza because we care about the integrity of the businesses that are represented here. And I appreciate that. And I also think that should apply to businesses that are profiting from genocide and war crimes. In addition to the widespread impact on our immigrant communities, our neighbors, our friends, our families, our coworkers, who are being terrorized by ICE. And they are using tools made by General Dynamics to surveil and perpetrate atrocities against our friends and neighbors. So I hope we can have a further conversation about what can be done, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for a public comment? Welcome. Jonathan, I think she got up first, if you don't mind going next. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Papermaster. I'm a new resident in Sonoma County. I live right outside of Occidental. This is the first time I've been to the Healdsburg City Council meeting. And thank you for having me. I have a comment to make following the last one about the situation with General Dynamics having a facility in Healdsburg, California. Lucky, it's my service dog. This is a pair of shoes of a little child, and I just want to call your attention to the fact that the equipment that General Dynamics manufactures here are guidance systems that guide missiles and bombs that are striking children, killing children. This poster from Code Pink, and I'm an organizer with the Code Pink Peace Group, says that of the thousands of people who have been killed, 40% of the children, 40% of them are children who have been killed in Gaza, 40% of those murdered. And those children have done nothing to deserve that fate. We weep for those children. Those are like our children. Those are innocent children. General Dynamics is directly involved in that. They're directly responsible. The business model that they use, the fifth largest weapons manufacturer in the country, using our tax dollars to manufacture weapons that are killing children. So I'm just expressing to you my hope that the City Council will find a way to invite General Dynamics to either leave Healdsburg or transition to some kind of peace and life-enhancing industry. Thank you for listening to my comment.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Susanna Ashkenaz. I've been a resident of Healdsburg for over 9 years now, and I work at a local farm in town. In my time living in Healdsburg, I've been struck by the warmth and the sense of community here. As a farmer at the farmer's market, I see the community coming out to support local producers. In the plaza, I see tons of people coming out for community events, Christmas tree lightings, turkey trots, concerts. And it's clear that the people in this town and in this room want a healthy, happy, and safe community and are willing to show up for each other to achieve it. It shouldn't be hard for any of us to then imagine that people, families, and children in other towns, maybe nearby or in other parts of the world, want and deserve the same health and safety and security. General Dynamics is an embodiment of the opposite of those values. As the world's fifth largest weapons manufacturer, it is directly involved in terror, destruction, and death. It manufactures weapons used in the genocide of Palestinians. It makes systems used for tracking immigrants, surveilling the border, and coordinating deportations and family separations. It is clear that the actions of General Dynamics are directly at odds with the values of our community. Growing up as a Jewish person whose extended family was largely decimated in the Holocaust, I spent much of my life studying these lessons of history and wondering at the people who stood by, complicit as atrocities occurred around them. Now seeing the world on fire around us, it is easy to become overwhelmed or even numb to the onslaught, but we have the opportunity to choose a different path, and especially in our own town. Standing together against ICE and the companies that support the terrorizing of our neighbors seems like the least we can do. And saying that we don't want weapons of genocide to be built in our town should be a standard that the city of Healdsburg can uphold. Thank you to everyone here and to you, the council, for holding ourselves to these values of safety for our community, human rights for our neighbors, and peace for innocent people in towns like ours all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. You're all clear. Thank you. Thank you for waiting.
Well, I'm Jonathan Perlman. I am a resident in town here. I come with something incredibly insignificant compared to the last few speakers. On the consent calendar, there is an item about Bureau Veritas, which is the business that reviews architectural drawings and plans for building permits. And as someone who has been subject to their work over many, many years, I would just hope that the building department, Mr. Willoughby, and others review their work, because I know they charge, in a way, they're charging the city in this contract that you're looking to approve under this consent calendar, where there's a huge amount of the work, up to 50%, 60%, or 70%, where comments and things are not related to the project at hand. So that's costing the city money. It's costing my clients money, because I then have to respond. On my own home, there were probably 70% of the comments did not apply to the project. So it's just something that it's just one of these things that just slips through every city that hires this kind of organization, has to pay for the service, because understandably, we don't have someone on staff to do that kind of service. But when I compare it to a city like San Francisco, where I will get, for the same project, I will get a third of the comments than I would get from Healdsburg through Bureau Veritas. So just something, again, I know there's nothing I can really do about it, but just something to pay attention to, in the fact that you're increasing their budget by $50,000 because we have more work coming in. But that's creating strange, unaccountable work for the people who have to respond to their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Do we have anybody else for public comment tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Thank you. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Can I ask a question on
Sure.
item? So on item 6B, that professional service agreement with Bureau Veritas, it seems as though it's a 3-year contract term that ends at the end of this calendar year, so December 31st, 26. I don't know if this is a Scott question, or Director Diven, or City Manager Kay, but do you anticipate that we'll go out to bid for a new consultant to start it up in 2027? And so should there be an opportunity to look at that per the comments we just heard?
Yes, kind of piggybacking a little bit on what City Manager Kay had mentioned earlier, there's this whole 45-day period before we have to consult. We're going through that process right now, and we're actually going out for all of our plan review and inspection service contracts. We'll be issuing an RFP and looking anew at those that are currently under contract, but also maybe there'll be some others out there that propose. So yes, we're revisiting it all.
Awesome, thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second. Have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Higley,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Herod.
Yes. Thank you. We don't have a public hearing tonight. We'll go on to old business. Item 8A is the budget development update with Finance Director Katie Edgar. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Katie Edgar, Finance Director here tonight to present the fiscal year 2026-27 and 27-28 budget development update. Next slide, please. The recommended action is to receive a presentation from staff on the community engagement results and budget development progress, as well as provide feedback and direction to staff on budget development. Next slide. Tonight's presentation will start with a review of the community feedback we received and highlight some of the main themes we heard. Then we'll dive a little deeper on some of these themes to provide additional context on the current landscape for affordable housing, community services, and the Streets Capital Improvement Program. As we conclude the presentation, there will be an opportunity for council to provide additional feedback to staff and clarify priorities. Next slide, please. Jumping right in, we'll start by reviewing engagement by the numbers. This year, the city offered 2 distinct feedback opportunities, with the first being an online budget simulation tool that was also offered as a paper budget survey. The city received a total of 199 responses, with 75% of the responses in the form of the paper survey, 18% the long simulation, and 7% the short simulation. 69% of the surveys were completed in Spanish, accounting for a majority of the paper responses, and 31% were completed in English. Next slide, please. The second feedback opportunity was the Prioritize tool, which also offered as a simplified paper survey. The city received a total of 154 responses, and again, 75% of respondents completed the paper survey, and 25% of respondents completed the online exercise. Approximately 73% of responses were in Spanish, which again strongly correlated with the paper surveys, and 27% in English, strongly correlating with the online submissions. Next slide, please. This chart represents the paper budget survey results, with the department categories listed on the left side and the green bars reflecting responses that increased funding and the orange reflecting decreased funding. As you can see, many of these categories had responses indicating changes in both directions. The 3 categories that had the most consistent responses were streets repaving and maintenance, housing, homelessness and support services, and community services programs. These categories each had over 130 responses that indicated additional funding should be allocated. Now, it's very important to note that the biggest drawback of the paper budget survey is that it does not capture the balancing act of allocating limited resources. Respondents could increase or decrease any or all of the categories with no limitations. In fact, 11 responses indicated that additional resources should be allocated to all 8 categories presented. Next slide, please. On a similar note, the paper survey also incorporated a comment section, and as depicted in the word cloud here, more was the most common word. There were over a dozen comments requesting more housing options, home ownership programs, and rent assistance. The next largest concentration of comments revolved around more community services and youth support, largely focused on supportive services for education, including requests for homework help, scholarships, and ESL programs. Employment services, food resources, farm worker support, and utilities assistance were also recurring topics. Next slide, please. The online budget simulation responses reflected a different perspective. While again, there was conflicting feedback in the individual categories, interestingly, community services and housing and homelessness services were among the categories that were decreased most often in the online simulation. Transportation and mobility, which corresponds closely to the streets and repaving category of the paper survey, was the only category that received consistent feedback to increase funding across both modalities. There were a handful of respondents that chose to fund their idea, which included 3 suggestions around transportation, including on-demand transit, extending shuttle and bus services to Enzo and Pasalacqua Road, and updating the train station beyond plain platforms that are seen in other jurisdictions. Other comments focused on reducing cost and mentioned cutting consultant spending, as well as DEI and climate resiliency funding. We also had people use the space to leave comments without any related funding changes, and those comments were to reduce utility bills, create more jobs, and high rent. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the online budget simulation requires respondents to submit a balanced budget. So if they increased one expense category, they must decrease another expense category or increase revenue so that the total budget remains balanced. In this chart, the green bars reflect the total dollar amount of increases for each category, and the orange bar reflects the total dollar amount of decreases for each category. Public safety and community services had the most drastic reductions made, but also the most significant increases. All categories except for transportation and mobility and your ideas reflected more significant decreases in expenses than they did increases in expenses. Next slide, please. Comments on the online submissions shared similar themes as the paper submissions. Comments touched on the topics of housing affordability, job availability, maintenance of parks and facilities, utilities assistance, public safety, and road maintenance. Next slide, please. Since one of the main themes we heard was more housing and homelessness support, this slide provides a little context into the services that the city currently provides. In November 2016, the voters approved to increase the total transient occupancy tax collected on every hotel stay within the city by 2%, and they designated that revenue for the purpose of providing affordable housing. The city collects just under $1.5 million a year through this tax. The Affordable Housing Program consists of 2 full-time staff, the housing director and an administrative analyst, and through contracts with local nonprofit partners, the city provides case management and street outreach services, monitoring of affordable for-sale housing, and shower services. The annual operating cost to provide these services is just under $900,000 per year. As a result, each year there is approximately $600,000 available to support additional discretionary programs or services. Over the past few years, the city has strategically saved these annual funds and used them to issue gap financing loans to nonprofits that are developing new affordable housing in the community. Most recently, $1 million of this funding was leveraged to initiate construction of the Dry Creek Commons affordable housing site next to Big John's. Another $1 million was loaned in the previous year to initiate construction on phase 1 of the Freebird affordable housing development at the Saggio Hills site. Additional loans in prior years supported the development of the Randall Apartments at the south end of town and the renovation of the scattered sites, which includes the Canyon Run, Montevina, and Piper Street apartments. In the upcoming 2-year budget cycle, there are no additional anticipated loans. However, the uncertainty surrounding the L&M Village operating funding is a major concern. The city has been successful in securing county HAP and Measure O funding for the current fiscal year through a recent NOFA process with the county, and the Health and Human Services Director has indicated intentions to include continued funding in their operational budgets. However, without a multi-year contract, the city would be responsible for funding the operating costs, which currently are about $850,000 a year and exceed the annual discretionary Measure S revenue. Next slide, please. At the March 25th goal-setting meeting, Council prioritized developing a financial strategy and spending priorities for community services, which aligns well with the community feedback received. In the next few slides, we will review several graphs depicting expenses from various views to provide the opportunity to get to know your community services department from a financial perspective. Unique to the city of Healdsburg is that when voters approved the 10% transient occupancy tax in 2004, they restricted the entirety of the revenue to support community services. This first chart reflects the last 5 years of actual expenses, and the last column presents the current adopted budget for fiscal year 25-26. The chart reflects a clear upward trend, with total expenses increasing from about $5 million to just under $10 million in the current year, reflecting the growth seen in TOT revenues. Each color represents a different category of expenses and reflects the proportional growth over time. The last item to draw your attention to on this slide is the orange category reflecting capital expenditures. Over the years, this category reflects the largest variances year to year and is what I would generally refer to as lumpy. And that's because capital projects are often slow to spend down budgeted funds in the design phase, but rapidly spend funds once they enter the construction phase. For example, the current adopted budget for capital includes approximately $1.2 million for the Foley Pavilion project, which has been budgeted since fiscal year 23-24, but due to the construction timeline has been carried forward, but is anticipated to be fully spent in the current fiscal year as construction has concluded. Next slide, please. This pie chart reflects the current adopted budget for fiscal year 25-26, providing a different perspective on the last column from the previous bar chart. In the current adopted budget, full-time salaries and benefits and administrative expenses are the largest driving factors, accounting for 29% each, or approximately $2.8 million. Operational expenses are next at 20% of the adopted budget at $1.9 million, followed by capital with 13% at $1.3 million, and part-time salaries and benefits rounding it out at 9% and $900,000. The Community Services Department is supported by 17 full-time staff and over 100 part-time staff that support programs throughout the department. The capital costs presented here only represent the capital improvements funded by TOT revenue and do not account for other grants or restricted sources like park impact fees that support capital projects as well. In the next two slides, we'll take a closer look at what is included in the operational and administrative expenses. Next slide, please. Administrative expenses are one of the largest portions of the community services budget, totaling $2.8 million. Starting with the orange section at the bottom, representing overhead allocation, these funds are the portion of general fund services that supports the department, for example, HR services to hire the part-time staff each year, finance services to process payroll and accounts payable. Next, in light blue is the information services or IT costs, and in light green is building maintenance. As with capital, building maintenance can also tend to be lumpy, as community services has a total of 6 facilities that they own and operate and have occasional large maintenance expenses. For example, the current adopted budget includes $250,000 for roof repairs at the community center, and in the prior year, another $250,000 was spent at ADA improvements at the library. Next is vehicle services and vehicle replacement, which maintains 14 vehicles and 13 trailers and tractors. The last dark green section on top represents insurance costs, which are allocated as a function of the facilities, property, and staff in each department. And unfortunately, recent increases in insurance have had negative impacts citywide. Ultimately, as the operations of the department grow, so do these supportive administrative expenses. Next slide, please. The next largest category to dive into is operational expenses. Similarly, over the years, operational expenses have grown from about $700,000 in fiscal year 2021 to just under $2 million in the current adopted budget. Next slide, please. Contracted services account for 42% of the operating costs budgeted at about $825,000. About half of this represents large recurring annual contracts that support landscape and park maintenance. These vendors include Golden Gate Landscaping, which focuses on mowing parks and open spaces, Land Care Holdings, which maintains the bioswale and right-of-way landscaping, Becoming Independent, which provides custodial park maintenance, and United Site Services, which provide portable restroom services. The next subsection of contracted services represents the contracted instructors, which provide recreation programs for a fee. The remaining contracts represent miscellaneous services supporting events and programs like tree pruning throughout the city, the development of the Senior Center End of Life program, the Christmas tree, and the fireworks show. Materials and supplies for events and programs like jerseys, snacks, decorations, and office supplies also represent about 28% of the operational budget, about $545,000. Next slide, please. This chart takes a step back and it brings us back to the total budget view of community services, except for instead of breaking down expenses by category, this chart reflects expenses by program. The General Administration Division accounts for full-time salaries and benefits and administrative expenses, which at 29% each accounts for approximately 58% of the adopted budget at $5.7 million. Collectively, the remaining program divisions account for approximately 29%, totaling $2.8 million. In this programmatic view, the cost for each program includes part-time salaries that support the individual programs, as well as the operational expenses. While the costs are not directly allocated to the programs, the 17 full-time employees do support these programs, with about 2.5 full-time employees supporting the recreation and after-school programs, 2.25 supporting facilities and events, another 2.25 supporting senior services, and 6 supporting parks and open spaces, with 3 providing customer service and administration, and 1 dedicated to capital projects. Next slide, please. This chart lists the programs in the first column sorted from largest to smallest in terms of total budgeted expenses, which is represented in the second column. Notably, as a reminder, these figures do not include the cost of full-time employees and the associated administrative costs like buildings and vehicles that support each of these programs. Several of the programs do collect revenue in the form of rental fees, permits, enrollment fees, and grant reimbursements. These revenues are represented in the third, and the final column represents the next net cost to the city or the portion of the program that is supported by transient occupancy taxes. What I aim to highlight here is the varying level of subsidies that are provided to programs, exemplified by the difference in total expense versus net cost. For example, parks and trails are almost entirely funded by TOT revenue, while recreation programs cost recover at about 78% when excluding full-time staff and administrative costs. Next slide, please. I'd like to take a moment to highlight some of the impacts that this program have on the community. The Parks and Trails Division maintains over 100 acres of parks and 325 acres of open spaces. Major recreation programs include the summer camps, which has about 1,340 participants, the Junior Giants League with 140 participants across 12 teams, the youth soccer that has 402 participants. In the Senior Services Division, over 673 households have registered memberships and 173 students are enrolled in the ACES after-school program. There's an estimated 314 total event days in the city and 514 participants enrolled in swim lessons. While these stats only represent a portion of services the programs provide, it gives a glimpse into the real-world impact that are being achieved. Next slide, please. With all these great programs and services provided, there's always still more to do. In the upcoming budget, some identified challenges include additional funding to support expanded operations at the Foley Community Pavilion as well as at the Swim Center. The Laurafish Somersault Park Project and Badger Redevelopment Project are included in the current adopted budget with funding only for Phase 1 developments. While still unclear at this time, there is a potential that construction costs can be higher than anticipated and additional funding or descoping may be required to complete the Phase 1 construction. Additionally, with the extent of the infrastructure owned, it is a challenge to stay on top of deferred maintenance. Investments varying from shade structures to improved lighting have been identified at various park locations and represent an additional strain on funding each year. Next slide, please. Switching gears, another major funding strain every year and a high priority for both the city and the community is the maintenance of citywide streets infrastructure. This slide represents the current draft streets capital improvement program and reflects almost $59 million in infrastructure needs over the 5-year capital improvement plan and $8.2 million in new appropriations in the proposed 2-year budget. In the next 3 slides, we'll review these projects in 3 categories: current projects, new proposed projects, and future projects. Next slide, please. There are 7 streets projects in the current adopted budget that are anticipated to continue progressing through the upcoming budget cycle. These projects represent almost $26 million in existing appropriations, with all but 1 project leveraging significant grant funding and development contributions. 4 of these projects are expected to need a collective $3.7 million in additional appropriations in the upcoming 2-year budget. The Grove Street Neighborhood Plan Implementation Project and the Powell Ave Johnson Pedestrian Crossing Enhancements projects are anticipated to need additional funding to begin construction in the upcoming fiscal year. The Ward Street Neighborhood Revitalization Project will need additional funding to meet the full matching obligations in the grant application, and the US 101 and Dry Creek Road Interchange Project will need additional funding to complete the design phase and prepare a shovel-ready project for additional grant applications anticipated to support construction in fiscal year 29-30. Next slide, please. There are 6 streets projects that staff have prioritized and proposed to fund in the upcoming 2-year budget. The University Ave Pedestrian Improvement Project is fully funded by a pass-through grant from the Freeburg Affordable Housing Development, and the Front Street and First Street Rehabilitation Project is proposed to be funded through design to prepare for an upcoming ATP grant cycle application. The Sidewalk Repair and Gap Closure Project is a continuation of ongoing improvements fully funded by the annual allocation of TDA 3 grant funding. The West Plaza parking lot rehabilitation is proposed to be funded by various restricted sources, including parking impact fees and parking lot revenues accumulated in the Building Maintenance Fund. The two new projects proposed to be funded with the unrestricted Measure T revenue are the Pavement Preventative Maintenance Project and the Sunset Drive Slope Stabilization and Pavement Repair Project. To fund a pavement preventative maintenance project that meets the maintenance needs, there would only be sufficient available funding to start design work on the Sunset Drive project, with construction slated for the fiscal year 2029 budget. However, staff have prepared a proposal that would scale down the pavement preventative maintenance project to fully fund the design and construction of the Sunset Drive project in the proposed 2-year budget. Next slide, please. The following projects have been identified as future priorities and are anticipated to be included in the 5-year capital improvement plan. However, due to funding constraints, they will not be included in the proposed 2-year budget. Many of these projects, as well as some on the previous slide, were included in the current 5-year capital improvement plan, and staff continue to evaluate and assess priorities each year to allocate the available funding. Next slide, please. I know we covered a lot of ground in today's presentation, and the next step in budget development is the May 11th special meeting, where staff will present the full draft of the proposed biennial budget for fiscal years 26-27 and 27-28. We've been working diligently on developing the budgets and are seeking council feedback on a few areas we reviewed today. Regarding housing and homelessness support services, you heard tonight that while there has historically been significant funding available to support affordable housing development, the city is currently facing uncertainty regarding the ongoing operating funding for the L&M. In light of this uncertainty, staff are not anticipating to propose significant appropriations towards new affordable housing programs, but we welcome council's feedback on potential future programs to explore. We spent a good amount of time getting to know our community services department, reviewing the various programs and some of the unfulfilled needs. As we saw, the Community Services Department provides a large array of services, and while TOT provides a significant funding source, there are still important priority choices to be made. Council has an upcoming goal to develop a financial strategy for the Community Services Fund, and council feedback on the current balance of priorities is appreciated. We rounded out the presentation reviewing the street's capital needs and welcome council's direction regarding the proposed project funding list, including scaling down the pavement preventative maintenance project to fully fund the Sunset Drive project, and council feedback on the prioritization of proposed versus future projects. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I'd like to go ahead and welcome public comment at this time, and then we'll take questions from the council and so on. So if there's anybody here today who would like to speak on this agenda item, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back and entertain questions and comments from the council.
Director Edgar, can you go back to you were going that so much great content. It's a lot. Really appreciate the work you do. You talked a little bit about the pavement preventative maintenance proposal for this upcoming fiscal year and kind of the next upcoming 2-year budget cycle. And then you said something about being able to fund partially or fully the pavement program versus the Sunset Drive project. And I just wanted to get a better understanding from you. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's not enough funding so a fully scoped pavement preventative maintenance project as originally proposed by the Public Works Department would only allow for us to have enough funding to complete the design of Sunset in the adopted budget.
It's the slide just before this one. If you go back one more slide.
Yes. Okay, so this proposal includes $1 million pavement preventative maintenance project and about $1.4 million for the Sunset Drive stabilization. The original proposed pavement preventative maintenance project, I don't remember the total, but I think it was closer to $1.8 million is the request. And so when we were sharpening our pencils, proposed two alternatives. Well, this alternative, which is to fully fund the Sunset Drive slope stabilization and repair maintenance project and scale down the pavement preventative maintenance project, because the PPM project is a collection of I think it's called slurry sealing, across the city at various locations. And so while we would like to do what we'll call a full project, it is a scalable project. And so this is a scaled down version of that project that still allows us to address ongoing maintenance needs, but doesn't necessarily do all of the needs that we would like to do.
Okay. And then does the Sunset Drive Slope Stabilization Project, does it have to take place over 2 years? So that if we didn't fund the first year, then we have to spread it out over 2, Director Zimmer?
It is not a simple, clear project, and it's nice to have that design completely done before we're committing the construction funds so that we know what it is we're going to be looking at as far as cost. But in theory, if you started at the beginning of a fiscal year, did the design and got it into construction, in theory, you could do it in a year.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. We talked a little bit about this in terms of pavement maintenance and just the mandate to fix the potholes that we hear so often. And I hate pitting projects against one another because we just wish there was more, as evidenced in the large letters in the opening slide. But I just feel like it becomes so much more expensive to maintain the pavement if we don't invest as much as possible in the preventative work. And we're already seeing so many of our roads decline. It's a tough one to figure out, but I think looking at not fully funding pavement preventative maintenance is not something that I want to see us continue to move forward with.
If I could just add on that, I think we feel your pain on that point, which is why this is something we're flagging. Something we noticed as we put together this preliminary streets CIP is that when you take a look at the projects underway and the grants, you see a lot of cells and a lot of rows, and a lot of it just kind of puts itself together based on the funding. There weren't that many moving parts, but we look for them for the same reason, is that we'd like to be investing more annually. And so what we've laid out for the council, that if I would call this the default option, it's because it's consistent with what's in our current capital improvement program. So it seems like a good place to start, but and it is very much, unfortunately, pitting projects against each other, but it's one that we wanted to flag for council feedback. And to the question about the timing on Sunset, I think you got a good response, but one thing I note is that if the council did elect to push it out, at least doing the design in this funded budget, for those who are concerned about that project, might at least instill some confidence that it's moving in the right direction, while also, if the council wanted, investing more money into the pavement. So I hope that makes sense, but this is one of, unfortunately, not a whole lot of easy moving parts on this list of projects, but this is one that's out there, where you all will need to help us make a decision about how we face the options.
Okay. And then for the West Plaza parking lot rehabilitation, Director Zimmer, can you talk a little bit about what's the $55,000 for this fiscal year, and then what's the proposed $1 million, and if that's indeed moving forward?
I have backup tonight with Clay Thistle if I need it. It's the same as with Sunset. It's the design and prep work for the actual construction.
And then will we have an opportunity at some point to learn more about what's included in the design, or if we're hearing a lot from the community that they want enhanced pedestrian improvements so that they're not walking out the drive lane and fixing the tree buff medians in that area? Is that something that there will be a future opportunity to weigh in on?
Yes, and that's another good thing about breaking the design out from the construction, is that allows us time to work on the scope with the community and with council.
Thank you. And then, sorry, while I have you, last one, the Powell Avenue Johnson pedestrian crossing, do you know, I know that's in this current year's budget timeline. What's flowing into the next year's budget?
It is advertised right now. I don't know if you want to come up, Clay, and he'll give me the real date.
Good evening, Clay Thistle, Principal Engineer. So we did open the bids last week, and we hope to award the construction contract on the 18th.
Fantastic. And then the 79,500 that's budgeted for the next fiscal year, is that just the remainder of the construction that would flow into July, August?
No, I think those are actually going to get moved forward since we were able to get the bids out, and those will be a cost in this year.
Great. Thanks so much. I think that's it for me for now. Thanks.
Sure. Vice Mayor Edwards.
Yeah, well, while we're on streets, have we had engineer look at that Sunset? And no, I'm concerned about Sunset and Sherman because those are pretty hefty projects. And I wanted to know if we've had engineering look at those and we're in good shape on both of those projects to put those off.
We have not paid consultants to go look at them. We're keeping an eye on it. In fact, I had a technician who was going out there on a regular basis to take photos to see if there was any kind of movement. It's not 100% guarantee. Probably hiring a consultant wouldn't be 100% guarantee, but it does not appear to be moving at an alarming rate, but one never knows.
Okay, and are we taking long-term weather forecast into consideration on those as we're using our water storage to kind of keep hearing this major El Nino possibly? So I'm concerned that we'll make it through a couple of wet seasons.
I suspect we will. But again, we haven't seen significant movement of the road there.
All right, thank you.
Before you sit down, just real quick, I tend to agree with Councilmember Kelly. Well, I don't know if you said this, but I do, or staff agreeing with kind of getting the design part going. But where I absolutely agree is, we can't just cut on the main maintenance of the road. So I was just curious, what are some of the priority streets? I don't have our CIP in front of me. I know we got the big book at home, but this is kind of the preview for our budget work session that we have coming up. But can you kind of give us an idea of what some of those streets are? Like if we reallocated those funds, what could get slurry sealed to give us an additional runway to,
we typically
life?
Try not to identify the very specific streets until we have the funding in hand. If you remember back from the pavement presentation, we have software and it can generate a large number. We then go through a process. The engineering staff go out and look at the roads, and then we decide the best way to use it. And we try to mix enough of the seal coat type work along with the repair that's needed before we do the seal coat type work. There's minor dig outs and there's all kinds of repairs necessary to prep that section of road depending on the condition of that road. And then from there, we can kind of develop a better sense of the cost of each segment that we're looking at. Because I've been doing this a while and it becomes very dangerous when we say these are the streets we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And then when you get there and the costs are higher or the costs are lower and then you're doing more. So we wait till we have a budget and then go from there. But it would be a mixture as stated with a focus on that preventative maintenance, a lot of the seal coat with the repairs.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback. I think that's all I had on streets, so thank you. I just had a comment as we're going into this. The community, well, actually had two comments. So the community services slide, it started you kind of went back 5 years, which I get, we kind of look at 5-year budget, but the 2021 is not an accurate representation just because of COVID and, community services was working on parklet programs and street closures and kind of reallocated. And I think a lot of the part-time staff, if I recall, was like put on hold, let go. We tried to maintain and keep our full-time staff busy. So it's not I don't think an accurate representation. Almost not that it's exact, but I wouldn't mind seeing a couple years before that included in that chart, just so we can kind of see before 2020, where were we? So this chart here, so I'm assuming it's gonna be less than where we are today just because of TOT revenue and just programming and everything else, but I would be curious because it's not just we were there and it went straight up. I feel like my guess is we're probably higher than that in 2020 came down.
So interestingly, in the same time we were going through COVID, we also had a new hotel, the Montage, come on board. And so that really skewed the data very much so. So what we would have anticipated to see was a big drop during COVID. We actually did not see, just because the number of hotels that we had changed.
Well, I mean, this is an expenses slide.
With-
So that's where I'm kind of curious to see like, the salaries and administrative expenses and those kind of things, like maybe just go back a couple of years.
We can absolutely prepare that for you.
And then the other thing, where's the slide? It was toward the beginning that had, actually, I have it here. I'll tell you which one. Where the budget simulation responses, I don't know what number it is, but it was where people were taking money away and allocating. I think it was the final one. I don't know what page 45 maybe. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Some of it, what we're doing here today is valuable, the budget discussion. I appreciate that there's a lot of people here to kind of hear this, because I think a lot of people think, well, you see like city administration, and I'm not trying to advocate for a bloated city government, but I think we do appreciate the work that staff does, and we don't have a lot. But I think, there's some of these like planning and building where, if I'm reading that right, it's decreased it substantially but then now we're needing outside contractors, or there's certain services and state requirements that we have to meet that ends up resulting in having to hire people. So I think some of that is, kind of is a nice guide for us to be able to kind of, all right, well, there's some clarity that needs to be put out there in the community so people can kind of understand, like, oh, we're paying for this and this is what we're getting for it. So that was just, when I saw that slide, I thought there was a little bit of a disconnect of the value that the city is providing. And I'm sure there's areas where we can get more efficient, but just in general, that was kind of my response to that. Thank you.
Did you have, okay. Yeah, it's obviously this budget is challenging. They're all kind of difficult, but I think this one's especially, and the sort of overriding theme I get from this, and I think, we see a little bit of confusion in the public response that Councilmember Higley is talking about, and it's understandable. I mean, there's a lot going on there, and it really deserves the deep dive that you've started to give us. This is really fantastic, and I appreciate the emphasis on the community services budget, and the street stuff is really where a lot of people's attention is. So that's really helpful. But, as we look at it, I feel the city's been very responsible in its financial governance and keeping on budget. And I also believe that we've been very responsible in terms of the programs and the work we're doing with regards to what the public demands from us. And so as a result, we're not seeing a lot of fat to cut here. It's really going to be difficult to find out. I mean, anything that you cut from community services, even if it's fun, it's going to be really deeply felt and impacted. You're not going to want to cut back a soccer program that's as vital and as healthy as it is, even if it's fun and games, right? It's not extra. And so there's a lot of different ways to look at these things. And I just want to underscore the challenge that's in front of everybody here, staff and council. And but this is a great tool, and I really appreciate the overview and the different ways of comparing the budget within the community services is really helpful start for this. And so thank you very much for your work on this. Do we have any other comments? Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible, but when we look at the community services expenditures, I think you said that like the way that the programs are parsed out, that doesn't include like the staff and overhead time that's associated with the programs. Is that right?
Yes.
So I have a hard time kind of being able to see a full picture without knowing what is like how much of, because the administration of the programs is a huge component of the overall budget. Are we able to, do we have our staff classify their time towards programs?
Right now, no. All full-time staff are categorized in the general administration program, and we do not allocate them out to programs.
Okay. I think my recommendation would be that it would be helpful for us to better understand how much it actually costs to run a program if we know like how much staff time is going to running that program, given that our staff is, it's $2.8 million of full-time salaries and benefits, and then it's $2.8 million of administrative expenses. So, and then we have another $900,000 of part-time salaries. So I feel like not knowing specifically what we're allocating $7 million towards, it's like, that's a hard one to be like, well, this program costs X when it's really X plus Y plus Z, but we don't have Y and Z shown.
I'll just note, we struggled with the same thing. We used to do this and it, I think, became an administrative expense in and of itself, as people are fluid, people are nimble, they work on different things. But we do have the remnants of that system and we do have pretty good estimates right now. Some of them are actually really not complicated at all, as you all know our staff and know how they specialize. Some are a little trickier, but I think we can formulate some intelligent estimates for you that give you a feel for it.
Yeah, and it certainly, I mean, it's not like billable hours. We don't have to like, classify it to like a specific program down to the minute. But I think just generally speaking, it would be helpful to know, a little bit more information as we're analyzing kind of that overall budget picture. And then I did want to, I was curious if we could look at some of the historics like on special events versus swim center, some of like, not versus, like some of those programs and how much we've spent on them historically, just to get a sense of like, we've always spent around 140,000, expenses on the swim center, if that's up or down compared to in prior years. It seems as though we're doing a lot more events than we used to, but I would have guessed that special events would end up have been a higher expense than 250,000, and then net's 176. So I was expecting it to be a lot more. So that's great. Given that we have how many event days per year? 340
That was the most staggering
days per year.
statistic of the
Every day is an event
presentation.
day in Healdsburg. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hagley?
Yeah, I think it's the next slide, 54, maybe 53. I just had a quick question. So when you have the revenue, arts and culture, they're showing no revenue. Is that because it's new? Are there anticipated revenues that would go in there in future years? Open space, I kind of get it. But it looks like some of these like community center, swim center, there's some revenue that comes from that. So is there anything anticipated with arts and culture in terms of revenue for that spot?
Not that I'm aware of. So the revenues are usually different fees. So for example, swim center, those would be swim passes, whether you're trying day passes or swim lessons. And for the arts and culture, there's really no services to sell. So I don't foresee any revenue coming in to support that.
Okay.
But as your commission liaison, I will say that there is a % for the arts program that is going to be coming before us at some point, which would potentially create a revenue source to support that program. So it wouldn't be a class or a program that individuals are purchasing like what, say senior services, if people are spending money on programs there, but it would be a different revenue source.
To clarify, it's a tax though. It's not a voluntary, we don't need to have that discussion, but. Okay.
But Director Theming, do you see anything in the future in terms of a fund source from arts and culture stuff out in the horizon?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. There are grant funds available typically, and they're cyclical depending on what's happening at various different levels of government. So that would be a potential opportunity for funding, but from a day-to-day kind of funding source, we're not talking about creating arts and programs classes. We have partners that do that and do it pretty well. So I don't see a revenue source coming in that would be like a day-to-day kind of revenue, like a soccer program, which you referenced before.
Thank you.
I think in an ideal world, that would come back to us in sort of a chamber of commerce, kind of a commerce, the benefit we get from people coming for the arts. That would that show up? It wouldn't be a line item, but would it be buried in that type of report of people coming and spending money as opposed to direct fees?
I don't think it would ever be money that would come to the city that would be represented in a line item like this. I think absolutely if it does drive economic development and people do come to enjoy the arts and spend money in the city, we would potentially receive sales tax revenue if they're buying and doing other things in the city at that time. But I don't think it would directly translate.
Yeah, I think that's correct. The Raven Performing Arts Theater did some like high level analysis of where their spectators come from. And many times they're from outside of the metro or outside of the Healdsburg area. Then ask them, oh, what do you do when you get here? Oh, we go out for dinner. We might go get wine before. And so there's that ancillary benefit that could result from arts and culture.
Yeah.
Plus the sales tax from gallery sales, I believe, correct? Is that right? So there's some income coming into the city, but it's not reflected in community.
There's no way we can quantify that to see how as our Arts and Culture Commission expands, we're seeing a difference. It's just kind of a back of the napkin type of thing.
I think it's a really good question, council member. I don't exactly know how you would quantify it other than looking at potentially sales tax revenue. And that seems like it would be a complicated process. There are studies out there that demonstrate the impact of the arts, but it's certainly something we can think about.
All right, thank you.
I'll just comment that Creative Sonoma, which is the county's arts organization umbrella that is part of the Economic Development Board, or the EDB, used to be the EDC, that's the right acronym. They commissioned a study to look at the economic impact of the arts in Sonoma County, and some of that study is broken down by geography. So a lot of that data around the economic impact of the arts exists, and it's a really robust report you can find on the Creative Sonoma website. But it's pretty staggering to see how much, tens of millions of dollars getting generated because of the arts in our region.
So I just wanted to clarify, I was specifically asking about the budget when we're looking at income and expenses related to a specific category. I think all of these bring additional revenue to the city, and that's part of what makes Healdsburg so great. But it was more a question of because the Arts and Culture Commission and everything is relatively new. So my question is really, is there anticipated revenue from whether it's grant funding or events or whatever? That's kind of what, where my question was coming from. It's not, is there any value in arts and culture? That's clearly not what I was asking, because there's a lot of value in it, and but it was more specific to this budget item or like open space. If Healdsburg Running Company wants to rent, running up and down Fitch Mountain, do we charge for that, or did they just get that's where I was coming up from, that where it's something that's specific that we measure for budget considerations. But I think I would anticipate a couple years from now that would be filled in with some grant funding that's reimbursing for some of the costs that we do, like you have for, like school maintenance. I'm assuming that's all coming from the school district. So it's a net zero.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I kind of wonder going forward as we transition into Councilmember Hagley's point about the arts and culture line item and the commission being new, a lot of the stuff that we put under special events, whether it's music in the plaza or Dia de los Muertos, like many would argue that is arts and culture. So having special events be separate, there may be a conversation to be had around, what is considered part of like the cultural programmatic stuff that we're already doing, and where should it sit within the budget?
Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Onward with the budget. So we're going to move on to item 8B, update on Police Department public safety camera use with Police Chief Matt Jenkins. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. So tonight, I'm providing an update on the police department's public safety camera and ALPR program. And we talked about this a little bit in March when I gave the annual police department update. And at that time, we did acknowledge that there are some community concerns that were surfacing, and we believe to be appropriate to have a separate agendized item specific to that discussion, which is why we're here tonight. Next slide. So just as a way of background, here's an evolution of the department's use of these technologies. It started in 2018 with the use of ALPR for parking enforcement purposes to help generate an increased turnover in parking in the downtown spaces. In 2022, it was brought forward as an opportunity to use fixed ALPR cameras for criminal investigations and helping with community safety. In July, we held community meetings in both English and Spanish. And following that, in August, council approved ALPR cameras for public safety use. After a few months, the system went live in January of 2023. And as that program came back before council in 24 for renewal of the contract, we also looked at the incorporation of public safety cameras to greater enhance the public safety benefit to the city. And that was approved in August, with those cameras taking about a year to finally go live. Next slide. So as we sit here today, we have 11 fixed ALPR cameras that have a 90-day retention on the data that is collected. On average, and again, this depends by month and time of year, but about 135 vehicles per month are detected on the cameras. And depending on what's going on, about 74 searches per month on average on the ALPR cameras. And under the current contract, we're paying about a little over $33,000 a year for those. The public safety cameras that went in about a year ago, when fully implemented, we'll have 10 pan tilt zoom cameras, and those have a 30-day retention period on the data that's collected, and those are a little over $45,000 a year to operate. Next slide. So these systems have proven particularly valuable in aiding our department in criminal investigations, particularly where suspect vehicle information is partial or unclear, where suspects have fled the city, and also in interrupting crimes in real time. Since implementation, I think it's important to note that our larceny and thefts are on the decline over the last 2 years, and these are historically been the highest crime victimization rates for residents of Healdsburg. And as we look at the totality of different crimes that are being addressed, you can see those there. When I gave the annual presentation back in March, I talked about the kidnapping case, so I'll spare you the details on that. One of the other ones I would like to highlight here tonight is the organized retail theft. I think we've all seen it in the media and news up and down the state that organized retail theft is alive and well and having a huge economic impact on merchants. We are no exception to that. We do see organized retail theft groups coming into Healdsburg. In one instance, our cameras alerted off of a known organized retail theft vehicle coming into town. Officers were able to find that car, and after an enforcement stop, were able to interrupt future crimes and seize an illegal firearm in that. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, community concerns were highlighted on the eve of the annual presentation being given back in March. And in preparation for that, I wanted to be able to come before you at that night and unequivocally say that we were not experiencing issues that some of the other jurisdictions within the state of California were seeing. So with that, I took a in-depth look into all of our data going back to January of 2023 when our systems went live. And as I did that and went through a line-by-line audit of the system using a different methodology than we've been using to conduct our audits, I discovered that there have been some out-of-state inquiries, which was both concerning to us and also raised a lot of questions as to how this could be given where we believe things were at with the technology and our settings. So we began an immediate inquiry into that. I had several conversations and meetings with our vendor and also some internal look and sorting through a lot of Excel spreadsheets and looking through data to try and figure out what actually occurred. So we're over the weeks since it was discovered and distilling all this down, what we discovered was on January 11th of 23, there were 63 inquiries from 28 agencies over a 45-minute window. It wasn't until we really went back and started looking at everyone's calendars and said, what was January 11th of 2023? Well, that was our onboarding day with the vendor where we were doing our initial training and going through the setup. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. Between January and August of 2023, there were 6 agencies from across the US that made a total of 38 inquiries. And what's really important to know is since August of 23 through the present day, there's been no out-of-state or federal access to our data. And I do want to highlight that because it becomes important as we talk about a few things here coming up. So next slide, please. So how did this happen? First, as I mentioned, the brief window access at 45 minutes on January 11th is a system issue that as we're going through the setup, there's check boxes you check and uncheck, and somewhere along that way in that 45-minute window as we were having our onboarding with the vendor, that checkbox was checked to allow what's called a nationwide lookup. Throughout the setup, that was unchecked later, and that nationwide lookup ceased. It was an inadvertent check within that setup period that just happened during the onboarding. It shouldn't have happened. I'll take full responsibility for that. But that has been corrected or was corrected at the end of that setup process. And what's important to note is the vendor has also taken proactive measures to make sure that that just can't happen in the future. That is a setting that is no longer checkable by end users, whether it's during the setup process or not. It is not allowed by any user in the state of California. Then the second issue is that post January 11th, 23 through August of 23, when 6 agencies accessed our data on 38 occasions. That was a system architecture failure on the programming side. So what happened there in the conversations with the vendor is agencies had the ability to change their location, meaning we're in Healdsburg, California. I could decide as a user that we're no longer Healdsburg, California, we're Healdsburg, New York. And then if I did a search, I'm no longer looking in California, I'm looking in New York. That opened up when those agencies made that change. Now, I want to assure that that wasn't something that we had control over. That was something that their setup allowed that to happen. Again, they've found that, they hard-coded that out, so, which probably the way it should have been in the beginning, but you can't change your location. You sign up for the service, they hard code that in, and you can't change that. And then, as I mentioned in the staff report, there was one federal agency access, and that was from the U.S. Park Police in the Presidio of California. That was another oversight in that when they put the address in as California, because they're located in San Francisco, California, it briefly registered as a California agency. They have fixed all those issues and making sure that that can't happen again. Next slide. So as we talked about some of the corrective measures that happened in talking with the vendor, and a lot of these were put in place obviously prior to our discovery of this. It's stuff they had been putting into place over the years and as they were updating their systems, but disabling national lookups. And at the same time, they also blocked out-of-state sharing for California. And I want to explain what the difference of those two are for you. So a lookup is the ability to search for an exact license plate and understand that that plate is in would hit on a camera in another jurisdiction where there isn't a one-to-one sharing agreement in place. It doesn't provide the detail of information. It just says Healdsburg or Los Angeles. And then you can then, as an investigative agency, pick up the phone, send an email, call them, say, you know, we have an inquiry on this vehicle that appears it may have hit your camera. We'd like to get more information. The sharing is a one-to-one sharing agreement where agencies can affirmatively say, we're going to give this other agency access to our camera system with whatever parameters we put in place. There were agencies in California, and I'm sure you've heard and read in the news that they were sharing with out-of-state agencies. I want to assure you, as we sit here today, that we never did share with any out-of-state agencies, with the federal agencies in any regard. But nonetheless, our vendor has completely blocked that ability, so agencies in California cannot do that. They've implemented automatic immigration search blocks, so that way that California agencies cannot inadvertently violate California law related to immigration searches for ALPR data, implementing a mandatory offense type based on NIBRS categories. And NIBRS are just the National Incident-Based Reporting System. Every crime within the penal code is assigned a NIBRS category, so those get tracked there. And then going back to agencies who change their locations, those system configuration changes were not being logged by the vendor as part of their audit systems. That has been changed, and those are now all being audited as part of the file. So if those changes were to come in the future, we could see exactly who did what, when, and where. On the department side, we were using a yearly audit method similar to how the Department of Justice audits our access to the California law enforcement telecommunications system. We have changed over to we're doing monthly line-by-line audits of the system to ensure that nothing has happened. Again, as I mentioned, going back to August of 23, we haven't had any out-of-state or federal access, but we are still maintaining and going forward looking at that monthly line-by-line just to ensure that there is no additional issues. Next slide. And so tonight is just to receive a report on the police department's public safety camera system used by the police department. And with that, next slide, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open up to public comment first, and we'll take questions afterwards. Is there anybody here who would like to speak on this agenda item this evening? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Is there somebody who would like to go first? Yeah. Vice Mayor Edwards, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this detailed presentation that it's been in the public eye recently. It looks like we get about 151,000 report hits a month on that. And in your reviewing of the program and looking at the camera information, in any of that, have you ever seen any identifying information of an individual?
No.
Okay, so the system is functioning as it was presented to us, as you have seen it to function, that we are not able to identify race, sex. It's strictly just the vehicle and identifying methods of the vehicle.
Correct. The system does not detect who's in the vehicle. It does not have any facial recognition, anything like that built into the system. It is designed specifically on what they call the fingerprint of a vehicle. It looks at the car to understand what color it is, what type. Is it a coupe? Is it a sedan? Is it a truck? To
Does it have a bumper sticker?
Does it have a bumper sticker? Does it have a lumber rack?
Yeah.
Yes.
Those types of things. And I noticed that a lot of cities, as we've evolved the situation system, as people become more familiar with it, the times that we're storing information seems to be shortening. And I know that the state is looking at 30 days. It looks like our fixed public safety cameras are 30 days. I'm wondering if we would be looking at 30 days as a kind of a consistent method of storage. Do you see any downside in going with a consistent 30 days across all views?
The only downside is you lose data sooner. And I can point to, probably a handful of occasions where a victim has come in beyond 90 days and reported a crime that occurred. And had we had data available, it would have really aided in an investigation of a crime that we may not have very many investigative leads on. That being said, Most victims do know that they're a victim of a crime within 30 days, and it would be acceptable. I think a lot of jurisdictions use 30 days because most vendors provide 30 days of storage at their standard rate, and beyond 30 days, there's an elevated rate for the extra storage.
And through your Sonoma Chief Association, have you heard any investigations that were hampered by having a shorter period of time?
I couldn't say off the top of my head on side.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that. And when we were having these problems with vendors and you see things, are you able to quickly put a stop to it, or is that something you have to report back to Flock and there's a long investigation, or can you quickly pull the plug if you found that there's a data breach or something that you're not acceptable with the way our system has been accessed?
If there was an issue and I needed to pull that plug, we could get it turned off within minutes.
And I just want to thank you for being forward with all the information. I know there's a few of us that ask you lots of questions about this, and you've always responded to my questions on it, and I appreciate your openness and how our city has used this system responsibly, and actually the report you gave tonight of how it's actually solved a couple of crimes. I really appreciate that openness with this. It makes me feel a lot better, and I hope it makes our citizens feel comfortable knowing that we're not just saying, okay, we take your word for it, but we're actually asking questions to make sure that our citizens are secure. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo those sentiments and just, say that I think the similar questions that Vice Mayor Edwards asked were definitely things that were on my mind. And I think you've answered a lot of the concerns with respect to data sharing and just the accessibility of that data. And we've just seen so many jurisdictions in the news as of late really botched the handling of that sensitive data and getting in the wrong hands. And we're starting to see more and more privacy concerns as various technology and face recognition and AI and all of these different components are coming together. So I appreciate the work that you're doing to ensure that we're safeguarding this resource and making sure that we're utilizing it for the purpose that it was intended, and just appreciate the ongoing check-ins around it to be able to know kind of, is it providing benefit? What are the instances when it has, and what are the potential downsides, and how are we mitigating that risk? So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There was some contention about bringing you back with this report, and that's fine, but I think was well worth doing, especially since you made discoveries that were worth making. And, I appreciate your being forthright and taking responsibility for those. And it doesn't sound like there's really any fault, on our end, Healdsburg's end, but nonetheless, it's something that I think warrants added vigilance, and that seems to be the step that you're taking, is to take a closer look more often at the systems, and as a result of your investigations, probably contributed to the changes that Flock has made, and that's important. So, I just want to encourage you to keep an eye on that stuff, because I think it really is important to people. There's, there's really two important issues here. Very important. One is, of course, safety that can affect, loss of life and property, and very important stuff on one side, effective police work that prevents crimes. And on the other hand, the misuse that we've seen, in other communities mostly, has created some very real worries that, in the era where people are worried about dissent, about immigration enforcement and so on. I think there's every right to scrutinize these systems as carefully as possible and to continue to do so. So I think I just want to thank you for taking the time and taking a look at this with all due seriousness. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to professional services agreement with Opticos Design Inc. for preparation of the Smart Station Area Specific Plan. Director Diven, welcome.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council members. Scott Diven, Community Development Director. I'm very excited to be here this evening with these next two items that are before you. It really represents the start of what can be a transformative process for the city of Healdsburg as it looks to take advantage of smart rail and passenger rail service returning to the city of Healdsburg. So first order of business is the Opticos Design PSA. Next slide, please. This item, we're asking that the City Council adopt a resolution approving an agreement with Opticos Design for the preparation of the Healdsburg Smart Station Area Specific Plan for an amount not to exceed $1.13 million, and to authorize the city manager to execute that agreement and approve any minor scope modifications if necessary. Next slide. This project will prepare a specific plan for the area around the planned smart station. It will address land use, both in terms of types of land use and intensity and densities of those land uses. It'll look at access and circulation, how the community can get to the smart rail station safely and efficiently. It will look at open space and recreation, particularly when it comes to the area along the Russian River. It will look at infrastructure or the lack thereof east and south of the Healdsburg Memorial Bridge, which really will open up the door to future development and opportunity in that area that's currently underserved. It will look at affordable housing at all levels. It will also look at economic feasibility. Our goal is to develop a plan that actually has the ability to be implemented and isn't just a pipe dream. And last but not least, there will be environmental review, most likely an environmental impact report or CEQA document that will allow any projects that are consistent with that plan to be streamlined and tier off of that EIR in the future. Next slide. So central to any kind of planning effort like this is community outreach and engagement. We're anticipating this to be a 2 to 3 year planning process. There will be extensive outreach to residents, to businesses, to property owners, stakeholders, and various interest groups. There'll also be a formation of a community advisory committee to track this process. That item is before you after this one. And ultimately, the goal of the community outreach and engagement is to create an inclusive and transparent planning process for the city of Healdsburg. Next slide. As a reminder, the Smart Station Area Specific Plan boundary includes the half-mile radius around the future planned rail station, as well as the entirety of the south entry area. So we'll extend from the southern tip of the community all the way north through downtown to Piper Avenue, or Piper Street, excuse me. Next slide. Again, we're very fortunate to be awarded $1.13 million from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC. There's no local match required for that money. We have 3 years to finish that project. We have to have the funds obligated by 2029. I believe it's June of 2029. And we'll commence this project once this professional services agreement that's before you this evening is executed. This effort will be guided by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's transit-oriented communities policy. The focus will be on increasing housing supply and density in proximity to rail, prioritizing affordable housing, increasing commercial densities near transit, improving transit access and mobility, and promoting an equitable and transit-oriented community. Next slide. But this type of project is a significant effort and it needs a consultant support as well as expertise. And to that end, we prepared a request for proposals, or RFP, that was issued back on January 6th of this year. The proposals were due February 20th. And at the end of that period, we received 8 proposals. There was a competitive evaluation by staff that was consisted of planning department staff and public works staff that culminated in 3 top firms being identified. And those 3 firms were interviewed by that same evaluation committee. Next slide. The end result of that process was that Opticos Design was selected as the most qualified team for this project. Their strengths included a familiarity with Healdsburg. They were involved with the Cottage Court project known as River House here over on Kennedy Lane. They helped design that layout. They also were involved in the downtown capacity study, which I believe was last year. And they've also been involved in station area planning efforts elsewhere along the SMART rail corridor. So they're familiar with SMART as well and the needs of the transit-oriented communities requirements. They also have a focus on missing middle housing. And in fact, they wrote the book on missing middle housing. And I think with all of our traditional neighborhoods that are to the east of downtown, that approach in looking at incremental opportunities in those areas without compromising that character, they're a really good fit for that. They also provided a very strong community outreach and engagement strategy that I think that'll work well with this community. Next slide. So that project team consists of several, the primary team, which is Opticos as the project lead, as well as some sub-consultants that have other areas of expertise. Lisa Wise Consulting will be providing market analysis, development feasibility analysis, anti-displacement strategies, as well as assisting with implementation and zoning updates. Fair and Piers will be providing multimodal transportation and parking management. Sherwood Engineering will be addressing infrastructure planning and implementation. Plan to Place and Place It are both being brought on board to help with the community engagement and outreach process. They both bring unique skill sets to that. And then Rincon will be the environmental consultant, providing environmental review and the ultimate CEQA document at the end of the process. Next slide. The project scope of work includes these primary tasks. There's of course a lot of subtasks along with each of those, but you can see here that it'll kick off with the initiation of the project and management throughout. Communication or community engagement will be throughout. There'll be a significant amount of work in the front end looking at existing conditions. We'll be preparing land use and circulation alternatives that ultimately lead to a preferred plan. With that preferred plan, we'll be able to look at the infrastructure needs and develop an infrastructure financing and implementation plan. That then finds its way into a draft stationary specific plan that will identify general plan and zoning amendments as part of that, the environmental analysis to support it, and then ultimately the adoption of the final specific plan by the City Council. Next slide. Again, the cost of the grant and the cost of the proposed work from Opticos align at $1.13 million. They are proposing a 24-month timeline to do the project, so that gives us a little bit of leeway if things stretch out as we get involved in the process. So it gives us a good almost 1-year buffer. And with the council's approval this evening, we should get them under contract hopefully next month, and we'll have this project up and running. Next slide. I also want to let you know that Drew Fink is going to be the project manager with Opticos for this project. He's available online if there are any questions of Opticos itself. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can for you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and ask if there's anybody here who'd like to speak on this agenda item. If so, please come forward. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Herod and council members. Mark McMullen from Parkland Farms tonight. I'm speaking for Caldera, the organization working toward the Healdsburg's designation as a cultural arts district. I'd like to thank Director Deven for his email this morning confirming that the Arts and Culture Master Plan will go to the consulting team at the outset as part of the planning foundation. Our simple request tonight is the council affirm that commitment in the record, naming the Arts and Culture Master Plan alongside the general plan, the housing elements, and the Central Healdsburg Avenue plan. So it is operational from day one and not an optional background. The station area specific plan covers one of the areas in the proposed boundaries of the Healdsburg Cultural Arts District. The decisions made in this process will shape what is possible for arts uses, creative workspace, and economic vitality in that area for the next 20 to 30 years. We're asking, we're asking that the policy that you have already adopted be carried forward in this process from the very beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Any comments? Go ahead.
We had talked previously when we were originally kind of having the kickoff meeting on this item to kind of evaluate some of the economic impact modeling of certain development types. And there was a specific study that we saw from a housing workshop that looked at kind of the baseline economic impact of like single family residential neighborhoods versus a shopping mall versus high density housing and multi-use neighborhoods or multi-use zoning with commercial intermixed within a neighborhood. And so one of the things I had asked about previously was, could we have like an economic analysis associated with some of the land use recommendations that are going to come out of this study? And I know one of the elements is economic feasibility. I don't believe that's the economic feasibility or the economic impact of what is ultimately zoned, but more about, is it feasible to economically feasible to do some of this? Is that accurate? And is there anywhere within this planning effort where we could see some modeling around economic impact as it relates to zoning or land use types?
I'll have to look at the scope in a little bit more detail, but I understand what you're getting at. They certainly will be looking at a range of different building types and looking at how those types work within the market. But in terms of how those range or a balance of uses work from an economic development standpoint, in terms of what it costs the city to support those, as well as how much those uses bring to the city in terms of revenues, I don't know that that's explicitly part of this scope, but we'll certainly work with the economic team to see what we can tease out of it.
City Manager Kay, do you recall the conversation that we had and some of that modeling that we had kind of seen teased from other cities? And is there a way that we can have that be one of the deliverables from this plan? I feel like if we're just zoning and planning for the sake of planning and not thinking about the long-term economic viability of our city in terms of having a more diversified economy that's not just solely focused on one or two industries, as we see major economic shifts happening in the wine industry and tourism, I think it would be a really short-sighted step to do a lot of planning just around where we want to see certain densities, as opposed to like, what does it mean for the long-term viability of our city?
I guess I have a clarifying question first. I would draw a distinction between what I think of as economic impact analysis and fiscal impact analysis. The latter being, and I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're getting at. As Director Diven said, the impacts on the city's budget. What does it generate? What does the project generate in terms of property tax, sales tax? So these things are related, right? That sales activity, but really, what does it mean to the city budget? And then what does it cost for the city to serve the project? That's a pretty common analysis that's done for development scenarios, and relatively, compared to at least the workload and cost of this study, relatively low drag. An economic impact study tends to be a little bit, in my mind, a little bit more vague when you're looking at what might it mean in terms of how it sits within our economic mix, job creation, business to business activity, multiplier effects of a certain type of business, would be a different study, and I think is, in my mind, a little bit trickier to do. So before I weigh in on how we might do either of those, I'm just curious if I'm capturing what you're looking for and if one of those makes more sense than the other.
I totally hear what you're saying in terms of, the how do you quantify the multiplier effect, the job creation components, those elements. I think maybe some sort of hybrid analysis of both, not just what does it mean in terms of how does the city provide services to specific areas or, miles of pipe and the cost of that, property tax revenue estimates on the revenue side, but a little bit more of what do we know about certain land use planning? Say this amazing committee works with these planners and they decide the number one thing we want to do south of the bridge is build a shopping mall, and which I'm not suggesting, but just, pie in the sky. And we can make an evaluation based on, yes, it would be nice to have a shopping mall. However, a better, more productive use of that land is an alternative approach. Are we going to be looking at any of that in terms of how these decisions get made?
Scott might have a different take on this or more to add. I think in a general sense, yes. And I think that ties into the economic feasibility, right? I don't think any of us are pointing at shopping mall, but it's kind of an interesting example. Is there enough spending power? Is there enough spending demand in the area would it work? I think that really is part of the feasibility analysis, and I hope I'm getting a nod on that, that we're doing in this study. So I think some of what you're getting at absolutely is baked in. Some of it we might want to keep an eye on, and maybe we can talk to the team going forward about once you get to a scenario, how does it play out? What does it do? Beyond simply, is it feasible? But I do think some of what you're referring to, I do believe will be captured in this, because part of the whole point of doing that is to make sure what we're proposing makes sense. So I think a lot of it will be captured, but we can also get with the consultant team and see, and we, I know they're listening now, but also that we see what we can do to flesh that out.
And are you envisioning that some of the proposed land uses will be evaluated in the context of what we already have zoned in the city? So, for example, like we took some industrial land that used to be zoned industrial along the railway and turned it into a bunch of single-family homes near Chiquita and Grove. Do we know if we still have a demand for industrial zone land, and what does that look like? Is that some of the things?
No, absolutely. I think that's critical to this process, because I think, since so much of this land is zoned industrial, we really need to pay attention to how much of that we want to see convert and how much of that we want to make sure we protect. Another land use example that I think we're going to have to really look at is office and employment. Part of the transit-oriented community strategy is to try to really increase employment in close proximity to these rail stations. But we also know that office space and employment, in Healdsburg, at least that type of employment is down, and a lot of those office spaces are really difficult within our downtown to fill. So proposing, a whole bunch of office on top of residential or vice versa might not be the smartest thing. And so that's part of what we want the economic team that's involved in this to help us with.
And then I think just my last question, but on the one of the elements is looking at the multimodal and access or circulation. And we know that there's some we may have assumed, but we will now know with certainty that there are some circulation challenges as it relates to transit and vehicles for the proposed depot site for the smart station. Is there a conversation around what happens if that parking as it exists and what the demand might be is not enough to support the station, or what happens if the neighborhood residents start to see the proposed densities and proposed building heights, and there is a pushback from folks in the community who say, actually, maybe we don't want this located in a residential neighborhood, and we want to see it located downtown where there is better circulation. And I know, obviously, I've been on the record as saying I don't think this is the best location for the smart station. I do think the smart station should be located downtown adjacent to the West Plaza parking lot. That said, that was not the majority of the council at that time. So as we do this station area planning and we're starting to evaluate some of those circulation challenges and parking challenges and the mandated densities around the station, what happens if the community doesn't like where this is headed?
I think we have to wait for the community conversation to begin and see where it goes. I mean, I think at this point it's too early to say. I think it's been clear that the majority of the community and certainly the majority of the council has looked at the historic depot as the location at this point in time, and that's what we're planning for, and we'll move forward with that. I was a little encouraged when we were digging through old photos and saw that great picture. I think we used it on the outreach flyer of the old, back when passenger rail was last year, and just how many people were milling about that station, and downtown was where it was then, and the station is where it was then, and it seemed to be successful, and people were getting around just fine. And so hopefully that'll kind of become the model, and we'll see a lot more people accessing that station the same way they did back in the day, using alternative forms of transportation, and yeah, maybe. But yes, we now have steel horses. So, but yeah, this is going to be a very big conversation for this community, without a doubt. And there's a lot of opportunities, there's going to be a lot of challenges, and there's going to be a lot of debate and discussion in the ensuing years, for sure. But also, I think, an incredible opportunity for this community.
I agree. I think it is a huge opportunity, and I think this is such a milestone moment, really thinking about what, just a small plan, the CHAP, what it did for the city and where it's led us. And I think some of these land use planning efforts, we have been talking for like a decade about doing a South Entry area plan, and here we are getting ready to launch a planning effort that it's not just that area, but a huge part of the city. And it is super exciting, as evidenced by the, dozens of people who applied to be on the advisory committee. It is really such a huge opportunity for the city, and I'm really eager to see, what Opticos comes back with and the community's involvement. So thank you for your work in getting it to this point, and I'm excited to vote in support of moving forward with this agreement tonight. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Opticos. It was really nice to see them and familiar with their product, what they did for us in the downtown study. The one thing I could not find, and I kind of asked this the last time we discussed this, is how Optico and the Citizens Advisory Committee kind of fit together. I mean, I went through their whole package and they talked about community engagement, but they didn't specifically mention how they would interact with the Citizens Advisory Committee. Do we have a better idea of that now, or that's something we're kind of
Once they're on board, we'll further refine that. At a minimum, Opticos will be working with the committee and presenting to the committee at some of the key milestones throughout the process. Given the limits of the contract, there's probably also going to be a lot of times where staff is working directly with the Community Advisory Committee on soliciting input and feedback on areas that have been identified by Opticos where we'd like to get feedback. All those meetings are going to be public meetings, so we hope that beyond just the 15 or however many are on that committee, that more members of the public will be there to attend. And they're really kind of, I look at them in some ways as, hosting this process as well. But Opticos will be working, hand in hand with us as staff, with the advisory committee, both the community advisory committee as well as the technical advisory committee, and soliciting all that feedback and helping to coalesce it into a plan.
Thanks for clarifying that procedure, because I think that's helpful when we all kind of know which direction we're going, how it's going to integrate, so that we're not duplicating a lot of things. We can move forward quickly. So thank you.
Thank you. I had the same question. And I would just add, is there going to be a direct presentation to the council from Opticos at some point early in the game, or do we need that, or are we going to have other opportunities to ask questions to them directly as council members?
Yeah, no, I think I think it would not be wise of us to go all the way to the point of having a final plan and then coming to the city council. So no, certainly at those key deliverables, like the preferred plan, for example, by all means, the council needs to see that and weigh in on that, as well as the planning commission. So yes, we will be touching base.
All right, great. Good question so far, and I'm really reassured by your answers. So thank you, Councilmember Hagley. Nothing? Okay. Did we cover? Pardon me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Somebody.
So I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving a professional service agreement between the City of Healdsburg and Opticos Design for consultant support to prepare the smart stations area specific plan for a not to exceed amount of $1.130 million, and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city council and to approve any future minor modifications to the scope of services being performed.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hagley?
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Yes.
Mayor Herod?
Yes. All right.
Can
Thank
I say
you.
one more
course.
item on this?
Yeah.
I don't know if do you know if the folks from Opticos are going to stay on for the next item, or are they dropping off?
I don't know.
Okay, well, in case they're about to drop off, my request would be, because I think this application to have folks participate in the CAC, my hope was to see a a really broad cross-section of residents. I think we're asking a lot in terms of how long we want people to apply to be on a committee for. And, we had originally talked about, because this is such a long-range planning effort, and we really, even though the plan's going to be adopted in 3 years, we know that the fruits of that plan will grow over decades and maybe won't even be fully realized for 40 to 50 years. And so it was our hope that we would see some people who are still active and engaged in the community in 40 to 50 years to be a part of this CAC. And without any negative feelings about those who did apply, we are truly grateful. My hope would be that throughout this process, obviously all of the meetings are going to be public, but that we can take some pretty clear steps in working with Opticos and the consultants, the sub-consultants, to really try to get out into the community and elicit feedback. I thought that 4-H presentation tonight of those high school students in the government club is a really great example of young people who really care about this community and care about the future, and how do we engage those voices in this process and make sure that we're not just kind of limiting ourselves to those who've signed up for a 3-year planning process, which, God bless you. Thank you for your interest in doing that. So thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay. Let's see. Did we do a vote on this yet? Yeah, we did. We're all good. Okay. So thank you. We're moving on. Oh, you're staying in your seat. I was just kind of expecting you to get up.
I'm not going anywhere.
You're welcome to stay. Great. So we're going to move committee, the CAC, for the Smart Station Area Specific Plan. And let's see, do you have a presentation to start this off with?
I do.
You do? Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
but I'll be brief. So can I get the next slide, please? So what we're asking this evening of the council is that you adopt a resolution establishing a community advisory committee for the Smart Station Area Specific Plan, and that you appoint members to that community advisory committee. Next slide. So the purpose of the community advisory committee is to ensure a strong community voice in the planning process, to provide input and guidance throughout the plan development, and to support transparent and inclusive engagement. The community advisory committee will advise staff, the planning commission, and the city council, but ultimately the final decisions will be that of the planning commission and ultimately the city council. The goal of the community advisory committee is to complement that broader outreach. And going back to Councilmember Kelly's prior comments at the end of the last item, yeah, we're really looking for members that will serve on this committee that will follow this process, will hopefully be there at the end of this process advocating for the adoption of that, but then also paying attention to the future and helping to hold future decision makers, future developers, and others accountable to being consistent with that plan. So hopefully becoming champions for that plan for years to come. Next slide. The structure of the committee, this is based on our meeting with the city council in the prior month. At that point in time, the council suggested that the committee be 15 members, that those members be appointed by the city council, that they serve until the plan adoption. That way there's consistency throughout the process. Those that were involved early on are involved at the end and they don't have to play any catch up. Our goal, based on all the other meetings that happen in this wonderful involved community, is to look at the first Wednesday of every other month as the initial schedule, but we can always add meetings as necessary or cancel meetings if they're becoming too onerous. And I fully anticipate that we'll have special meetings on the weekends or other opportunities. So initially, just because of the resolution, we've identified the City Hall Council chambers for those meetings, but we may look at more comfortable venues where we can get 15 people around a table and have the public attend. So we'll work on that. Because this is a commitment and it's important, like with other committees, if you have more than 3 consecutive absences that haven't been excused by the chair, then we would ask for that removal of that participant so that we can get someone that is going to be an active participant. This committee will be Brown Act compliant and it will be supported by city staff. Next slide. The roles and responsibilities are to provide input, to advise decision makers, to represent various community perspectives, and to support the public engagement process. Next slide. The desired representation of the committee, again, this came from the city council. Is to look at homeowners and renters, members of the business community, institutional stakeholders, those are your nonprofits, your religious institutions, et cetera, residents of affordable housing, youth and senior representatives, historically underrepresented communities, accessibility and mobility advocates, as well as members that may have relevant technical expertise, whether they're planners, architects, transportation experts, economists, et cetera, that would kind of help lend additional expertise is always desired. So next slide. To that end, we launched a recruitment process back on March 5th. Outreach included newspaper notice that occurred in both the Press Democrat and the Healdsburg Tribune 4 weeks in a row. So that went out to both papers 4 times. We promoted it on the city's website and through social media pushes. We had it located on the community bulletin board down at the Healdsburg Plaza. And then, of course, word of mouth. There's certainly a lot of discussion out there. The deadline was April 3rd. And next slide. We received a total of 29 applications by the deadline. I would note that we did get one late submission, so there are actually 30 there in front of you. And there is one applicant that's outside the limits. However, that applicant does own a business that's right kind of square in the middle of this planning area. And so since we didn't see a lot of business representatives, we left that in there for your consideration. I did a little bit of a tally to kind of see how many of the folks were within the planning area boundary that I highlighted in the last presentation, and it's almost a perfectly even split, 15 and 15. So there's residents from the very north end of town all the way to this side of the bridge, at least, since we don't really have many residents living on the other side of the bridge right now. But this process may change that. Next slide. So some considerations for the city council. You'll note that there are several commissioners from current bodies that have applied, and that's a great thing. You want to consider whether you want to appoint current commission members to this body. I can tell you from my personal experience, planning efforts like this often do have liaisons from Planning Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, sometimes even the city council. So it allows them an opportunity to follow the process and help keep their fellow commission and committee members informed along the way. Whether you want to accept applicants that are outside the city limits, but in the case that I mentioned, happen to have a business within the plan area. And also, as you go through your appointments, that you're achieving as good as a balance of interests as possible, given the applicant pool. Next slide. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or otherwise I will leave the difficult work to you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you framing this discussion so nicely. And I'm going to do, I just want to, first of all, I want to thank the applicants. And I think I can speak for everybody that we're just so pleased to have so many fantastic choices. And it really speaks to the spirit of this community that so many qualified people have already made a commitment to serve. And I don't take any one of these applications lightly, or that commitment that's come forward to serve for 2 to 3 years on this committee lightly. It's a big deal. It has a lot of impact. It's a big responsibility, and really the applications were top notch. There wasn't a single one of them that didn't have something that made me feel like this person would contribute something valuable to the group. And so thank you to everybody who applied. I'm going to go ahead and do public comment, and then we're going to set some ground rules if we can, and then we'll move forward. Do you have something you want to say?
Just curious on procedure on this. Do we adopt the resolution to establish the committee and then discuss the applicants, or do we do that all at once?
It's a good, interesting question.
Okay.
Okay. So let me open it up to public comment. Is there anybody here who'd like to come forward to speak on this agenda item? Okay, going once. Oh, here. Welcome.
Hello, Council. My name is Skylar Osborne, and Councilmember Kelly, I'm really glad you brought it up because the first thing I thought of when hearing about this Community Action Committee was we are too far from Cottingtown and we need a mall. I'm kidding, of course. My husband and I moved here about 6 years ago. We've been in Santa Rosa we were in Santa Rosa for a couple of years prior to that. And each year it seemed like my job or we would move. We were just out of the range of being feasible for taking the SMART train. And so finally, we're approaching this deadline and I have an opportunity to shape what this looks like. And I will be an active user as I currently work at the Windsortown Green. And it would just be a fantastic opportunity to be able to take a commuter rail. So thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to having the chance to help shape what this looks like moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Mayor Harrod and council members. And my name is Jim Morris, and I'm one of the applicants, and be my first foray into city and county governance. But one of the things that I had an initial curiosity about is 15 people on an advisory committee. I know that the goal is to have a broad, diverse group of people. From a too many cooks in the kitchen thing, is that a normal amount? 15 on advisory committees? Is it always better to have more or to have highly qualified fewer? So just a general question in particular. I would be honored to be part of this because I'm a 30-year resident of Healdsburg, would love to be part of this and expect to be involved in community service for as long as I can, as long as they keep pushing me forward. So anyway, that was my general question on having too many people on an advisory council. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So let me go ahead and address that as one of the questions that we should have in front of us is that we did have a discussion on the number and landed on 15 because we wanted to make sure that we could include a certain variety of types of people on this committee, and that number seemed to fit that. That being said, I just want to remind the council that we're not locked down to that number. If for some reason we wanted to go higher or lower, that's a possible outcome here. For the time being, we'll aim for 15. But as things go forward, we could adjust that. I think that'd be okay, unless someone disagrees. And then there's the question about commission members. So there could be a concern if we had 3 members from a certain commission, which is a possibility, that would be too many, and that there should be some probably a different relationship between the planning commission and the CAC, and so maybe if we appointed 3, that might be out of balance. But we could decide to say, just let the best person serve. We could say no commission members. I don't think that's really a good option, but we can discuss that. Or we could limit it to 1 per commission. That may be a reasonable choice. Let's just have that discussion. I just want to put that out there. And then the other thing we could decide, and I'm not sure in what order we'll do this, but there is a person from outside the city. I can just ask now if we have any opposition to having this person serve.
That lives outside of the city?
Yeah. No. Okay.
don't have an opposition to it because he owns a business that's right next, he owns Longboard Vineyards or
Yep.
Winery.
Yeah, no, great. Okay, thanks. So that's settled. So I believe you have a spreadsheet that you can share with the whole meeting. Is that right? Can we take a look at that? And this may help us or may not, I don't know. You know, I should tell the people here that normally when we do a commission appointment, a subcommittee is appointed, 2 of us, and they make their decision, they bring a recommendation to the council, and we vote on that. And a lot of the discussion happens outside of this meeting, but with this group being larger, we decided to do it here and now. So it's different. We're kind of, you know, I think I've talked with the city manager. I also talked with Councilmember Kelly about this process because she's gone through it with other boards and to find the best way forward with this. And so that being said, we are improvising a little bit. So if anybody has any suggestions on how you want to go, I'm open to that. Here before us is just a list of names, and that's perfect.
Any chance we could zoom in just like the slightest bit?
And while we're doing that, I'll just note, council, this truly is nothing but a list of names. We want to support your process. This is just a way, if there's note taking to do or to help keep the names handy.
It appears to be alphabetical by last name. Okay. Great. So let me make sure I've got any other. Oh, so how do we feel about the inclusion of different commission members?
I like the idea of it.
What?
I'm okay with commissioners being on this body.
And if we had as many as 3, that would be okay? Or
I'm okay with as many as 2 or 3. I think given that there's 15 people, having 3 planning commissioners is not like that many. If this was like a 7-member body and we were putting 3 planning commissioners on there, I would feel a little bit weird about it. But I think maybe, 2 planning commissioners, and I'm open to the other folks from the other commissions.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, no, I think that since the planning commission is 7 commissioners, the 3 wouldn't be a huge issue on that.
Okay.
On my list, I had 1 planning commissioner, which was Connor McKay, chair.
Let's not go into names yet, but
Okay. 1 arts and culture commissioner and the parks and rec commissioner. And I think 3 planning commissioners is too much. I feel, to me, 1 of each, I think makes sense. And just in general, I kind of, can I share like my preference on how I got to this, or do you want to limit it just to
we'll get to that in a minute,
Okay.
I think.
All right.
So thank you for that. We'll just go forward with the open door to everybody, and that suits me as well. What I'd like to do is we'll go through the group, and I think we should give our top 3 choices. And if you agree, when it comes to your turn, you should recommend unique choices. So if somebody picks person A, and that was on your list also, then go down your list 1 more. So we get a range of people, and then that'll land us with 12. And there's going to be a lot of wiggle room there, in terms of discussion about adding people, or if somebody, whatever, we can have that discussion. And does that sound okay? We can start with that. Do you want to do something different?
No, that sounds good. I just wanted to add that, what we were tasked with, it was a little difficult in some of this because we were looking for homeowners, renters, members of the business community, institutional stakeholders, and it wasn't always clear on all the applicants whether we had all of those in there. So I think that we all did our best to discern from the applications of what those criteria were. That was important to me.
That's true.
To go through
Yeah,
that. So that was part of my, I wasn't able to, retired, I could tell, but, as far as youth was a difficult one because ages weren't on there. and some of the institutional and historically underrepresented communities could guess at, but wasn't clear. So I think we all did our best to hit those 8 criteria.
That's true. And it was challenging and it's imperfect. And there's also the fact that there's people we know and people we don't know. And that's just kind of part of it. And that's, part of governing a small city anyway. So, I mean, that's just the reality of it. I don't know that there's anything we can do to tweak that right now, but unless anybody else has any comments on that point. Okay. So, why don't we, if the procedure of naming your top 3 is okay, we'll do it in order of seniority. We'll go Hagley, Kelly, then Ron, and Mayor goes last. Okay. So, and then you can use a spreadsheet to maybe put initial next to them.
So I don't consider it top 3 because I have actually about 12 names in here. So I'm looking forward to, I like your
You may
idea.
get to them.
Yeah, but I like how you kind of framed it. So if somebody else mentions it, kind of get checked off. So I'll just start with the existing various commissioners that we have. So and before I start, kind of what I looked for, my preference was area resident and businesses. So I really appreciate the spreadsheet that you shared that kind of showed where everybody lived and whether they were within the area, because I think that's important. I tried to look for newer voices, and the fact that I'm starting off with commissioners kind of goes contrary to that. But, and then tried to look, we talked about this before, people that are looking at the next 50 years versus the last 50 years. I think it's important to have both perspectives, but, I'm kind of looking, I want the commission to have the input from people that are, potentially going to be here for the next 50 years. So I'll just do the 3 that I've on the commission, which would be Ron Dobley from Parks and Rec. I think that makes sense to have his knowledge and expertise with what's going on in the city. Noah Jepson, representing arts and culture. And then I had Connor McKay, chair of the planning commission.
That's 3. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, can I give you
No, we'll go back to that.
just the names?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not muddy the waters yet. I mean, we'll just let everybody do the top 3 and or close to it. And I mean, I think everybody should appreciate that we all have a list of 15 people here at least. And, it could have gone longer in my case, but, so it's super challenging to cut it down, but, that's kind of how it works. So, Councilmember Kelly?
Matthew Lopez, Delene Whitlock, and Matthew Dabrowski.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Edwards?
Okay, I'm gonna go pick up here. Mark Hone, Skylar Osborne, and Bruce Abramson.
Okay, give me a minute. It got more difficult for me, right? Yeah. I'm going to go with Jim Morris, Mark McMullen, and Jerome Levine.
I'm sorry, who was the last one? Oh, Jerome Levine.
Jerome Levine. So, thank you, everybody. So we don't have to assume that these people are all in, but obviously this is a good starting place. If the discussion continues. But that's 12. And so, how would you like to proceed? I know you were eager to share some other names. David, so do you want to go ahead and do that?
Sure. Yeah, I had Oded in there as well. And then
honestly, the others mentioned. Did somebody mention James Gentry or no?
No.
Okay, so he was on my list. I did not have Bruce, Mark, or Jerome on mine, but all the other ones were already on my list.
Okay. Councilmember Kelly?
I had a lot of the same folks on my list. A couple of the people that I didn't, I also had Oded Shaked. So Sonia Bick Barwick, who works for Generation Housing, but also lives in town as a 24-year resident, had her on my list. And I also had well, we've been talking about the commissioners, so I won't go back. I want to respect the conversation of having not stacking the planning commission on here. But my hope is that we have a lot of commissioners who attend the meetings and participate, even if they're not formally on the body. I'll leave it there. So another vote for Oded, and then Sonia Bick Barwick. And I was curious about James Gentry. I don't think I know James, but he lives close by in the project area and lives in a housing type that I think is an interesting conversation to include in the mix in terms of diverse residents who live in diverse housing types.
Would you repeat the three names again? You said-
James Gentry, who I believe Councilmember Hagley had already just mentioned. Oded Shaked and Sonia Bick Barwick.
Okay. Vice Mayor Edwards?
I had Darlene Whitlock on that. I'm just trying to, let's see here. And Jonathan Perlman. That is 2. Do we not want to do 2 or just 1?
I think everybody gave 3 in this last round.
He meant 2 planning commissioners.
Planning commissioners.
Oh, well, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jonathan Perlman.
Yep.
And then Paul Biala.
Okay. Okay, and I'd like to suggest Catherine Dolph, Ryan Harrell, and another for Paul Biala.
Was Catherine the one that submitted after?
Mm-hmm. So,
sorry, who was your third? Catherine, Paul, and Mayor?
Oh, I'm gonna confuse myself here. Ryan Harrell.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so can we look at the spreadsheet now? Do you have that? Yeah, okay. Let's take a minute.
I think we're 15. Isn't that everybody?
No.
No, there's a lot of other really great applicants. But we're not done. We can take a closer look at this and see if we want to make moves.
I have a question if anybody knows Ted Waddell. While only living in town for 3 years, but lives on Railroad Avenue, like right there next to the station area. So I thought that, but I didn't, I just feel like we have such limited information in these applications. So I didn't know much about
I
him.
do not know Mr. Waddell.
Okay.
Do not either.
My tally says we have 18 of the
Yeah,
ones
that would make sense. There's a couple that received 2 votes according to my notes. One is Paul Biala, the other was Odette Chuckhead, and the other was James Gentry.
I had some people that like, so when Councilmember Hagley first went, like I had Connor as one of mine, but I didn't say that I also voted for Connor because you told us to just go to.
Right, so maybe two doesn't, yeah, that's right, it doesn't bear into it, so that's okay, this is just a starting place, this is not, like I said, we're gonna take this in stages, and
Now said Connor. Now said Connor, so.
Okay. So once we get this longer list, we can go down it, and I'm not sure what order we should take it, but maybe we can move some of the folks in as finalists, and take it in another tier after that. Okay, is that okay?
Vote my goals.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a lot. All right.
Now, should we go back and add?
So what,
Are you able to sort based on those with X's? Or any type of sorting in here? Like, for example, there's people, like right now, we're still sorted on alphabetical last name.
yeah,
Or
yeah, we
can
can
you
do that.
remove the people that didn't get any? Yeah.
It's amazing what a spreadsheet can do if you know how to do the formula.
Sorting. Excel tricks.
I'm good at it too. I just don't want to do it now. Go ahead and repeat your suggestion, because I think that
Mayor
makes
Harrod,
sense.
while we're waiting and no rush, because I know Excel is not an exact science, although it is. Is it possible for us to, with the 18 that we've already identified, to just maybe ask like how many people, like, for example, if we were looking at last name Bruce Abramson, how many of us had Bruce on our top 5? Or something like that, or.
That's a great idea.
15?
Yeah, that's kind of how I wanted to do it. So
How
Maybe
many are
just-
unanimous to start?
Yeah, or maybe like we could just say how many of us had them in our top 15. If we're trying to get down to 15 now, at least we can get some process of like
okay,
consensus.
all right. And there we. Okay, so we'll go. I guess we'll just go from top to bottom, and we'll just do hands in the air for. Let me see. Yeah, just find out how many other people had this or that person, and on their top 10 or 15, I guess, right? Doesn't matter that much. So okay, we'll start with Bruce. So Ron, put him in this first round. Okay, moving on to Paul Biala. I had him down. Okay, okay, add another for him. Sonia, another, okay. I had Ron. All right, everybody, Ron's pretty much in.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Matthew, sorry if I'm doing the first names, it helps with the pronunciation. Matthew Dobrowolski. So we had, you had also, okay. All right, so another firm. That's good. Yep, thank you. Catherine. All right, that's okay. That's a second and a third. Edwards and Kelly. Okay, James Gentry. I did.
I did.
Okay. Okay.
I'm Paul Biala. I am here.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for being here. Well, we're speaking nicely about everybody because it's really the most painful thing in the world to do this. Okay, moving down the list here, then we have Ryan Harrell, right? That's next. Okay. Okay, Kelly. Okay, Mark Horn, I had him. Hagley, Herod, okay. Noah Jepson, I had him. But
Sorry.
did you have Horn also, Ron?
Edwards also did. So 3 for Mark.
Oh, okay, right, okay. So Jepson, that's myself, Hagley, and Kelly, okay. Jerome Levine, I went in the first round. Anybody else? Ron? Okay. Matt? In this round. Well, I was in the first round. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Matthew Lopez, I had him. Ron, okay. He's unanimous there. On that level. Okay. Connor, I had him. Kelly, everybody did. Okay. Mark Mullen. Okay, that's a set. Kelly and Edwards. All right. Jim Morris, I had him. David had him also. Ron had him also. Okay. Skylar, I had him.
I had it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And all right. And then Jonathan, I had him.
Oh, wait.
Oh, I thought we're okay with that. So yeah. Okay.
Who else had Jonathan?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And then Oded, Hagley, and no.
No.
Did you miss the X's went away for him? Oh, okay, right, okay. I did not, but okay, so oh, I'm sorry, she wasn't, she didn't show, so I had her. Okay, and you had her, so there's 3 there then.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so how many folks have 3 or 4 X's at this point? You want to color code them? Is that easy for you?
Should have just put 4 across.
Yeah. I did. It looks like was it just 2 of us?
Yeah, Jonathan.
Right.
You said 3 or more, correct?
Yes. All right, what's our count now? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in green. Okay. Did I count wrong? Is it 12? Okay. Did we get a count yet? Heard a couple numbers. We have 12? We have 12. Okay. So why don't we just each take a turn making a case for somebody at this point, and we'll just debate it. So you want to go first? Go ahead.
Sonia.
Okay. David?
Making a case, I think, you mean somebody that I already have that's not lit up? I think Odette, I think the fact that he has a business right next to the station, I think that's a very valuable voice and input to have in this conversation.
37-year resident and an immigrant, and has been in the wine industry, so can also talk about kind of the economic challenges of what's going on.
Or the possibilities. I think there's a lot of, input there.
I'd concur.
I concur.
Okay. Whoops.
So the people with just one were Ryan Harrell and Bruce Abramson. And then the ones with two were Matthew Drubelowski, sorry, I know I'm butchering that name, Sonia Bick-Barwick, Jonathan Perlman, Jerome Levine, and then Odette, who we just talked about.
Right. So Jerome, who goes by Jerry, has really amazing planning experience. If you didn't notice it, and I think it would be really fantastic to have him as part of the group. But I mean, planning on a civic level, and but if I'm in a position between choosing, I'd also love to see Jonathan on there too. He's always been such a really thoughtful contributor. So I don't get to pick two, do I? But
my thought around Matthew Dabrowski, even though he's a newer resident of Healdsburg, only been here 4 years, but they own a number of properties in and around the smart station and are doing like some future residential development, and they also own rentals there. So
that was really attractive, part of his application for sure.
And I know, I mean, I think it's hard to find, they're like a young family. I think they just had their first child that's less than 1 year old. So just thinking about like people who will still be active in the community, that little one may be here to see this thing come to fruition in 50 years.
Come on now.
Yeah, he jumped out, and I think he was a property manager too, right? Yeah, and so that kind of jumped out in terms of just really being eyes on or boots on the ground of what's going on, who's moving in, who's moving out, where the need is. And I think that really opens up a very valuable perspective that could, share insight on the commission.
His wife's also in the wine industry, so I thought from that perspective as well, they own a small family-owned winery, so kind of understanding the economic challenges of the industry.
I'm going to take those suggestions to heart and elevate him. I'm not sure how that'll work, but so where are we at now, folks? Let's see. We're putting Odette in green.
So I think you're at 14.
So we're at 14.
Does that include Sonia or not including Sonia?
Not including Sonia.
I would love to see Sonia on there. I think, we are definitely skewing on the gender divide. It would be great to have more women represented. Plus she works in a housing advocacy organization, and she's lived in Healdsburg for 24 years and has, raised her kids here. And now they're kind of that post-college age, trying to figure out how to move back here. And
Okay, I concur. I'd add her.
So the only hesitation I had was the advocacy side. And that was, Mark. I like Mark, but again, it's a very, I want to make sure that, the voices are there, but I'm concerned about the advocates taking over the commission conversations or really driving things when we're trying to gather input from the community versus trying to push a specific narrative.
I would agree.
That's where I kind of.
I hear you. I'd agree with you, except for I think she's really the only one who fits in that category neatly.
Doesn't it hit institutional stakeholder? As
There you go.
One of the areas. That's how I had her checked as.
Okay, so, final, that would, if you, I don't know, do we have, agreement on Sonia? You're a yes, Ozzy. Okay, all right.
She had 3, right? Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that brings us to 15, if I'm not mistaken. And, so I think we should just make sure everybody is comfortable with this list. And then the final suggestion I had is, are we going to be, if people drop out, are we going to go back to this list, to the applicants? Are we going to open it up again? I mean, because at that point, we do have a wait list, that's really great people.
I kind of lean toward opening it up again. I think you definitely invite the people that applied, but if people do drop out, the only reason I say that is, to your point, from a gender balance standpoint, or, there may be a way to kind of broaden the net to try to attract other applicants that not, because I'm sure there'll be some press or something about here's the committee and here's what we're doing. Some people start getting involved. And then there's, as this thing picks up steam, you're going to have other people that want to apply. That's just my thought.
And I don't know if we put out our list of 8 that we were trying to hit. And maybe if we go forward, we will put that out to maybe encourage some people to maybe fit those different.
Yeah, it's true. That'd be worth doing. Okay, well, we can cross that bridge when we come to it, I guess. But, obviously people who applied now, we really would love them to apply again.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to add one comment. I think, Jim's here. He applied for, was Parks and Rec Commission, I believe. And, it was one of those where it didn't quite make the cut, but we told everybody, apply again, and we appreciate you being involved. And so just, if don't make the cut here, apply again, because
great. Yeah.
We do like.
Skylar ran for the school board and he came back again.
Yeah.
So, all right.
High five.
I think we're there.
so I'd like to make a motion that we appoint the people in green on our screen. Do I need to say the names? Please say no. Okay.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Just to clarify, the motion is to adopt a resolution establishing a community advisory committee and appointing its members to provide input and guidance on the development of the smart station area specific plan.
So moved.
Second. Are you already second?
Second.
Councilmember Higley?
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell? Oh, excuse me, Vice Mayor Edwards?
Yes.
Mayor Harrod?
Yes. All right. Thank you. And I can't say it strongly enough. Everybody who applied, it's heartbreaking that we couldn't include more people. And there are many people that I which I could have made the list longer, what have you. It's an imperfect process, but I just looking at this list, it's going to be a really fantastic group, and I'm really excited for the work that's ahead of them, and I look forward to hearing what they do. So thank you once again. All right. Good job, everybody. And that brings us to council reports on matters of interest since the last meeting. Who would like to go first?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Oh my gosh.
Something to report. We're in the process of for NCPA, Northern California Power Agency, the search for a new general manager. And we had in-person meetings, interviews with the final candidates, not the final, but getting closer. In Oakland, a full day at the Oakland Airport. Oakland Airport actually sits on, it's part of the NCPA family. So we have access to a conference room. So I was able to walk right past TSA and didn't have to go through it. And conference room from 7:30 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. with half-hour breaks. So it's quite the day. So we're making progress, and hopefully we'll have somebody in the next month or so. That's it.
Good to hear. Go ahead.
I forgot something that was really, it was really a pleasure to fill in for you on the scholarship commission for the high school. That was really
Make me feel bad.
No, it's really good. You know, it's
No, thank you for doing that.
the second time.
I have conflict of interest.
It's the second time in my life I've actually done scholarships, and I would say that previous job where I did scholarships and this are just one of those days that you feel really good at the end of it. And
Awesome.
it also shows, unfortunately or fortunately, that the zip code you're raised in makes a difference, because we're able to provide this scholarship money for a variety of students who may not have this opportunity if they lived in other cities. So it really shows the concern and care that Healdsburg has for our residents from top to bottom.
Yeah, I went to the scholarship night, the big thing they do at the Raven last year for my older son, and it's an amazing event. It's so inspiring. And so I'm glad you enjoyed that, and I'm glad you were there. Thank you. I went to the Cal Cities meeting last Thursday and down in San Anselmo because I wanted to catch a presentation on how state mental health funding is being funneled down to cities. And the short answer is not easily, but it was good education and a chance to catch up with other city leaders in the region. And then we had our mayors and council members dinner in Healdsburg, which I think was a big hit. I'm sorry I had to fly out early, but I think everybody appreciated being there. Thanks for covering for me there also with the update. I was able to get dinner and then I left and we did the update, but and thanks to Raina and everybody who helped put that on. It's nice to, not to compete, but to show up at the other cities with our event. Yeah, it was really good. So that's it. I hereby adjourn the meeting at 9:20.